Just to kickstart this session, we have Dory with us, the managing partner for Utopia Kathmandu, to sort of start with the introductions as well. Dory, on to you.
Yeah, thank you, Prina. Thank you everyone for joining. We're going to have a pretty intimate discussion today, it seems like, which sometimes are the most insightful and maybe freeing. So thank you for being up, for participating. So just a quick introduction to Utopia. I think most people here are already quite familiar with us. So we're an urban innovation platform for emerging cities. We are helping to build the urban innovation ecosystem in these cities. And at the moment, we are in Kathmandu, Rio de Janeiro, and Lagos with a program in Manila. And this year, we're hoping to move towards opening in a city lab in Manila as well as Dhaka. So that's why these conversations, and we're really interested in getting a strong understanding of the context locally, and this helping to set the agenda for which urban challenges and kind of what posture we'll be taking in each city. So just a brief introduction there. Feel free to prop up any questions you might have into the chat. I'm really hoping to have a good discussion today. Everyone here are people we've spoken to previously, and very excited to dive in with you all. So with that, I'll hand over to Prabina to introduce the session.
All right. Thank you, Dory. Just diving straight into this workshop session and the activities that we have lined up for you. Maybe a bit on also recognizing that a few of the participants that we have here are new to this workshop series. Just sort of a recap from W1 workshop here as well. So this workshop, this particular one, W2 REFRAME, is the second in the series of intra-city Asia workshop series from Utopia. With our first W1 workshop, which was titled Surface, we aim to get insights on and also add on to the initial challenges for each of the three cities, which are Dhaka, Manila, and Kathmandu, with the workshop participants. So these initial challenges were synthesized from a series of interviews we conducted with diverse groups of urbanists and different experts, also within the three cities that I just mentioned. So maybe just starting with the intentions for W2 workshop here. With the second workshop in this series, which we call REFRAME, our intention is to reframe and focus on new ways of looking at the same urban challenges, and also allowing for fresh perspectives for the design solutions. With the insights from W1 workshops, we have discussions happening on three broad thematic areas, and just introducing the three broad thematic areas here. The first one would be access. So the insights that we sort of derived from W1 workshop was that many people managed to dwell in the city despite the wide gaps in accessibility to different services and also to opportunities. These could just range from basic necessities to also things that provide upward mobility as well. So I guess the question here would be, how might we flip the dominant service provision approach from perception of to actual users' needs? The second broad thematic area that we have is representation. So the insights would be, we represent the minority of the city and should seek to understand how the majority make decision, navigate, and also build the environment and also view informality. So the questions to tackle here would be, how might we amplify the needs and experiences of the underrepresented majority of the city, and also how might we bring inclusive narratives and narrators to the decision-making tables. The third thematic area that we have is mindsets. The past events, leadership practices sort of shape and narrows how users, policymakers, and those with influence value and prioritize the world around them. This sort of visibly affects our cities across the board, uh, which includes design of our cities, our social structure, our governance pattern, and even to our approaches to different services, necessities like education. So the question here would be, how might we shake this grip and pivot our vantage point to reveal underlying and authentic stories and ideas of new and existing urban experiences that can shape a more user-centered city, or use it to make better choices as well. With the session today, we will sort of try to probe into the understanding of these thematic areas, and how they have, if they have manifested into challenges for each of our cities. We will also be slowly inching towards solution building, as we will collectively discuss and analyze any innovation or interventions that are there in the form of solutions that we have seen both work and also not work. So the very broad intention for these workshop series is sort of to have a connection between our allies, between the different stakeholders, experts from the 3 different cities. So we want to connect all of you and have a set of communication around our shared or maybe varied interest areas going on. So in the spirit of sharing and on onboarding different allies and different partners, we have 3 facilitators with us today who are also participants for our W1 workshop. So I'm just going to quickly introduce them as well. Facilitating our access breakout room, we have Purnima Bhattacharya. Purnima ji, if you could briefly introduce yourself to the audience here.
Thank you very much, Prabina ji. Hi everyone, this is Purnima Bhattacharya, and I work with UNDP within the External Lab Nepal. So just to give you a brief about the External Lab Nepal, we have been focusing on particularly 2 frontier challenges, which we came up after we knew that these are the national priorities for the government as well. So we are particularly focusing on urbanization and unemployment. And we have been currently exploring and testing various solutions which are particularly affecting, and which has stronger links with urbanization, especially related to open spaces, open parks, plastic waste management, as well as sustainable urban mobility. And as well as we are also looking on to the aspects of unemployment. So yeah, looking forward to this session, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
So maybe we'll just move on to Tanzil, who's facilitating the second breakout room on representation.
Hi everyone, I'm Tanzil Shafiq. I'm currently doing my PhD in urban design at University of Melbourne, and also I run a design and research think tank called Open Studio that's based in the UK, but we have projects going on across like different territories, so some in Bangladesh, in Australia and UK as well. And my area of research is informal settlements. So for my PhD, I've been studying the largest informal settlement in Dhaka, which is, I'm sure some of you will know, it's called Karail. And I'm looking towards moving to the UK because I'm recently been appointed as an assistant professor of urban design in University of Sheffield. So I'm a bit of in a transition right now. But looking forward to the session, and I've been, following Utopia's work for some time now. So I'm very glad to be part of that process. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanzil. Over to Choi now, who's going to facilitate our mindsets breakout room.
Yes, thank you, Dory. Thank you, Prabina. Hi, I'm Choi. I am in Manila right now, and I am an architect, an educator, and a community builder. From the time that the pandemic happened, I've shifted from the education of undergrads and exploring how dominant paradigms in education could be questioned, and we enter into a lot of inquiry and speculation. And so aside from continuing with my design studio where I have projects that makes me a better educator because I'm immersed in the built environment, I have also put up with 3 other friends the Architecture Collective, which is the group that I'm bringing in. And because we would really like to discover with through our networking how it is possible for us to work very, very aligned ideas with Utopia. That's why I'm very grateful to have been invited here by Sam and Utopia like this. And I had to pitch in with Tanzil. One of my colleagues is a graduate of the University of Sheffield, so I'll be in touch with you also. So
okay.
To me, networking is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. Just
right.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Before moving out to the breakout rooms, I'd like to also mention here that this event was made possible in part by the Royal Academy of Engineering. So a big thank you to them. So moving on to the breakout rooms now.
Nice to have you again.
Hello,
Yeah.
hello.
And then that's Tauhid.
Yeah.
My well, Tauhid, and you're from Dhaka.
Hi. Yeah.
Hello, and Asmod, right?
Hi. I'll be keeping my video off for internet reasons, and there might be some background noises. So,
Okay.
Great meeting you.
Yes, I don't think we're. Yeah. So I don't think we're a lot. I mean, there's no time for this, but maybe you can say something briefly about yourselves so that we get to know what we are, working on. You want to start, Tauhid?
I was working for an urban design think tank and a design institute research lab in Dhaka for around 6 years. I recently quit their organization a month ago, 2 months ago. I'm now moving more onto, I have joined a group of technology experts. So I switch between design, urban design and technology often. So now I'm full-time working with some apps and websites and some other programming languages that focuses on many of the services that the cities need. This is what I'm currently doing.
Great. Thank you, Tauhid. Asmad, how about you? Yes.
Great. Now let me also switch to my phone. Let me see if I can turn my video on. There it goes. Perfect.
There you go.
If there's some issue, I'll go back to audio. Hi, Shui, hi, Tawhid, and Kavya. I'm Osmod. I work at Kathmandu Living Labs. So Kathmandu Living Labs works, it's mostly work on data and technology, ranging from providing map services to disaster resilience to building portals for the government. We work on a range of technology products, that also has connections with civil society, and also lead a research center at a business school here in Nepal. So we research on local innovations, entrepreneurship. I guess I just limit my introductions here. I'm really excited to just sharing my thoughts. And I don't know how long this would last. Sorry, I am putting disclaimers. I told Probina that I might have to leave before 11 if this extends for any reason. There's another pre-scheduled meeting. So just stop here and looking forward to the brainstorming or just the session forward.
Yes, thank you, Asmad. And yeah, Kavya, please tell us also something about you and how you ended up in Utopia.
I think how I ended up in Utopia is a little bit of a long story that I can share
Okay.
in the third time. But so I'm Kavya. I'm with Utopia Kathmandu. I wear many hats in Utopia Kathmandu, but my primary contribution, I'd say, is in process design. So supporting any in-house innovations as well as external innovations in the design process itself. Very excited to be here. In this discussion, I'll be mostly supporting in the back end, but will also try to contribute to my best abilities in the discussion as well. Thanks.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you. The group is not so big, and so we take advantage of this to share more. But while we were starting this, you were saying that it has to be because we only have 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, like a few minutes, so that when an idea comes to mind, you may want to take advantage of the chat box, or just to so that because we're able to also multitask, which is really not non-existent. It's just that we think fast. And so for this, I wanted to tell you that there'll be 4 segments to this short meeting that we have. And the first idea is for us to understand, like it's not a discussion yet, but you may wanna, you may speak up, or you may want to already write on the chat box. Like what's your understanding of mindset? What comes to mind when you hear mindset associated with or manifested as problem areas for your city? Like if I may say, for example, in the Philippines, for us, mindset is that because of our history, we've been under, I think, 3 colonizers. And so our voices have been really curtailed. And so later on, the ideas of affluence is traced back to this colonialism. And so it has influenced the design of our city so much that it is car-centric rather than pedestrian. And so even if you have great ideas about making the city for man, for the inhabitants, it's difficult because of the idea that the goal is to have a car, because the city is more built towards that. So how about for you? When you say mindset, you think of Dhaka and Kathmandu. What might it mean? You may want to speak, or just write down also while the others are speaking. Please feel free. There's just like 3, 4 of us. Yeah. Mindset.
Yeah, that's a common mindset, actually. It's same here in Dhaka as well. People aspire to buy a car because that it is also a symbol of status and also like an achievement of life that I own a car. Like, so it's a thing to do, a thing to like look forward to. And at a personal level, when people are thinking about their own comfort of themselves and their family, I think we cannot judge them. And I think it's completely a harmless thought that I need a car for my family. But in a collective way, for the city, yes, it is definitely causing problem. Now, we have to be very careful about like who do we put the blame for, because individual person aspiring, progressing, and looking forward to improve in their lifestyle and standard of living, we should never point a finger at them, because it's not their fault. It is the city that is failing, and that's why they're looking forward to own a car. If the city would have offered all good facilities in public space, in pedestrian facilities, public transport, then probably they would automatically think that, okay, probably I do not need a car now, maybe in future, or maybe when I absolutely need it. Or even if I own one for emergencies or for going out long trip, I don't need it every day. I can just keep it there in the garage. So the city needs to come forward. I don't think we can change people's mindset about not buying a car. It doesn't work that way. It has to be other way around. The city needs to come forward and offer options to not own a car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think.
What do you think?
Yeah. This is a broad question, and as having difficulty just to, meaning, of course, like we will not. Nepal has one set of history. Without getting into details, I think maybe before saying this is the mindset of Kathmandu, because it's a big city, the estimates are anywhere between 3 to 5 million people, depending on what numbers you look at. So do you look at mindset based on age, or socioeconomic status, gender, mobility? I think it will all be different, So say, like what you said about like ours, I think it applies, but then we have to look at socioeconomic status in that sense, right? Like what do people of different socioeconomic status aspire? If I just look at the gender, that will be completely different, than age. Like young people aspire to or have a very different mindset in general than people our parents' age, like who use certain kind of social media. So I guess it's just hard to generalize for me at the moment. But what I see, having lived in few cities outside Nepal, it seems the mindset in Nepal and other cities in maybe Asia or like somewhere outside the continent, there is commonality. I think, meaning what I hear from Dhaka, you can apply to a segment in Nepal. That's definitely the case. But I guess I don't know. I guess I'll have to be more specific in answering this. So I'm not answering directly.
I understand, Asmat, because the idea of like coming in strong with a big topic such as mindsets, which means also you're also free to just narrow it down to whatever you want, what comes to mind when you say mindsets. But I like that you've put forward like the idea of like mindsets that could be put forward by the youth, by the older people, and then the like technology like this, no? In fact, I wanted to ask you, how about the government? In we still have 4 minutes. So like, where does the government come in? And also influences from external forces, no? Because it's not, of course, we people are a certain way, and when we talk about affluence, it's that. But then this may be shifted also by how when Tawhid, you said that the government, the city has, but who influences the city? Is it how strong is the society, the people by themselves, or governance also? So what mindset mostly come into play more strongly? Yeah, with all of this put together. 4 minutes, and then we move on to interesting also. Is that too difficult? Anything, anything at this point, just ideas, no discussion. It doesn't even have to align.
Yeah.
What comes to mind?
When I was saying that the city needs to come forward with the options, well, who are the city? I mean, what do I mean by city needs to come forward? Somebody is doing it, right? It's a person. It's at the end of the day, it's an individual who is making the decision, and their mindset, of course, changes and shapes the way city is going forward. So you're right. Unless we influence the mindset of those people, the city cannot come forward, because a city is not a living thing. It's run by living people, and unless we somehow get to them and tell them that this is what we need to do, the city needs to offer more options for people to like live better and probably decide about not owning a car because the city is providing them enough. We have to like somehow reach out to this group of people and make them think and believe differently.
That's interesting, really. Okay, it's like a blob. It's okay. We can move on from here, and then maybe Asmod will come first, and then also Kavya, you also, if you like to like jump in. And now I'd like to ask you, for some reason, with the situation that you're in your country, in your have you seen some innovation happening? And then with this, Heidi Pack, we have someone who just come in. Yeah. Do I move far? Do we wait for Deepak to... Deepak, where are you from? Are you joining us?
Good morning.
Hi.
Yes, I am from Kathmandu.
Oh, yes. Hello. So we have 3 people from Kathmandu, which is fantastic. And then we have, that's Asmod from Kathmandu also. And then Tauhid from Dhaka.
Yeah.
And I'm Choi, I'm from Manila. We have gone through the first segment already. And we were just talking about, because here the theme is about mindsets and how different frames of mind move the city. And it has a lot to do also with where we've been, our history, and then the influences, and then the city in general. But now we'd like to move forward, and I think you can join in also, definitely. Talking about innovation. Let us say something works or doesn't work in your city. Have you seen some innovation happening? This can be by innovation, it could be started by anyone. Because it's exactly as Tauhid has said, a city is not one person, it's many people moving it. In fact, in Manila, we've talked about Manila as a city as a blob. You know, it's mindless unless people join in. So have you thought of any innovation that has been done? Maybe by innovation, something may exist already, and then you introduce something new and to improve the situation, perhaps. Maybe in the back of your head, you think of some problem or challenge, and then you and your group or anyone has done an innovation to make it work. And then what are the benefits of this innovation? And then who benefited from it? Were there setback? Who led it? Is it a good idea like this?
And if I may add, the topic is quite broad here. It's on mindsets, and so it can be pertaining to mindsets as we were discussing, or it could be a general innovation that you think is improving the city right now.
Yes. You know, if I could say also here in Manila, because we have, I hate to say this, but our government is not very strong. It's we work in silos. We don't, I mean, not we, but the government. But I always want to believe that they're doing the best that they know how. Because if I don't think this way, I'll go crazy already with all the negative things that's happening in the city. But what we have been doing are, I'm sure you've heard of this, guerrilla urbanism. We talk to our friends, and then we turn our area into something that's temporary, and it's something that we have all agreed on. And so it's an innovation for us. Like we don't have public spaces, for instance, but we see people in an area, and then we try to create something for them, and then we are able to build community. We know that it is temporary because people leave and people go, but it's a setback for us, but then it keeps the hope alive. There you go. So have you done something similar where you are? Anything?
Yeah, I can add a few points. So I think one way that I basically adopted in my previous startup was basically to allocate the profit early on before building a company. So let's say while forming a company or a startup, what we basically decided is that so 100% is not going to be profit. So let's say out of the profit, that whatever we make, we will give 10% to the, let's say, war widows, or 10% will educate it, give it to the children and stuff like that. So what that basically does is that it builds a a very inclusive sort of thought in the team, and it builds motivation as well. And you also sort of tend to value other things a lot, and make a statement not just to the team members but to the public, to the customers as well, that we care much more than the profit. So I think I'm coming from a business point of a sense wherein say whenever we are designing a organization from startup, I mean starting up or thinking about design, we can also start to think as to whatever benefits that we might reap, how can we go about segregating those into different buckets, and where do we want to put focus and how much we want to do that. That is just not necessarily with confined to inclusion only. It could be somewhere how much we would be allocate to the research and development and things like that. So I think figuring out a way that if we are going to be successful or if we are going to act and have that one list at the beginning might help us being more clear and calmer while executing.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you. Yeah. Do you have ideas of what benefits innovation that you may have done? Do you think innovation would work? Because things exist already in the city. Maybe you haven't done it yet, but it's in the back of your head. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I think definitely there's a need for innovation, and maybe sometimes what happens is that there's this stigma or we think innovation to be very, very expensive sort of an affair wherein we will maybe build some rockets or something like that. But I think it's not that. It's just like it could be anything very simplistic. I think for me, innovation is basically coming up with a system that is much more efficient than the past system, the system that existed in past. That is what basically innovation for me would mean. So let's say if earlier I used to make a breakfast, like it takes 45 minutes, if I'm able to do that in 40 minutes, for me that would be innovation. So I think we can start to think about what would actually innovation or mindset in fact mean, and it necessarily does not have to be very capital driven or a lot of people need to come. I think if we just start doing innovation, smaller things in atomic habits that we have, then probably it will lead to much more larger compounding effect. So that is how I would like to think about it.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Okay. Not to put you on the spot here, Asmod, but I'd also like to maybe direct attention to the organization that Asmod is representing, which has innovation built in the DNA, but also in a lot of the products that they've been putting out recently and over the time that they've existed. So maybe if you just want to share about the innovations coming out of KLL as well.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thanks, Kavya. I was thinking at KLL, there are quite a few things we do. And innovations, we've learned that, so it lies in small things, right? A lot of times. There's also a Hindi word called jugaad, like how do you do best to solve the problem given the resources that we have. So KLL is mostly like doing a lot of, I think, our projects. So recently, so while working with a COVID-related issue, we work with the workers trying to identify the issues. So lots of, I think, in-house innovations, that we do in terms of mobilizing resources. So this is more like organizational innovation, right? How do you deploy resources? How do you adapt to COVID? So that's more of like what we do, but also like I can talk about tools that KL has built in the past, a lot of tools, so but also a couple of thoughts I had in mind was, so this pertains maybe outside KLL, this might be relevant. When I think of innovation,
yes.
I mean, KLL is mostly tech and we do a lot of things, if you go to our website, there's a lot of new tools we've built, and focusing on community, like, gathering citizen science data on climate change, on mobility, there are lots of things which are website will tell. But in Kathmandu, I think that's one that's more relatable to Manila and Dhaka is also, I was thinking, urban innovation, like mobility in terms of, right? So the income here is pretty low for like, our per capita GDP is just around $1,000. I think what Kathmandu has done really well is we have these Safa tempos or clean tempos, 3-wheelers. It houses like 10 people, like, runs on like LPG gas. So transport fuel is very as clean as it can get. It's not burning diesel. Houses 10 people, it's like 10 cents people can drive. In Manila, it can be jeepneys or something, in Bangladesh, I'm sure there's something similar. So the city, I think, has found way. A lot of times, innovation could be big and like it could be groundbreaking, but in Kathmandu, maybe sadly, I don't see that. But I think in terms of urban innovation, I think that's a at least I haven't seen that in many parts of the world, and maybe that's something unique to Kathmandu, the way ecosystem here has found a solution for majority who want to commute in the cities. So that's one concrete example, I think. For Kathmandu Living Labs, I can go on for ages, but maybe the right time, I'll just stop. I felt.
Yeah, because for all you know, there are things that you're doing in Kathmandu that we can learn a lot from, and we really take it like this. Yes. Is there anyone else?
I could show quickly about one of the many things that we were doing at Bengal Institute for Dhaka. I don't know how much time I have, but the way we approach the problems of a city is we try to propose projects that doesn't need massive changes, that doesn't need a lot of money. So projects that are owned by, property that are owned by the government, that are just lying around, and probably they already have the budget and money, and most certainly they're wasting it somewhere else, doing something crazy and like wasting the money. So the way we approach, we design simple solutions that the government can already do with their existing means, so that they don't have to like change anything radically. They don't need a massive budget, nothing. The small changes that can like drive big solutions. If I could share my screen, no, I think that's not a possibility, but I could just give one example here in the link. It would be very difficult without showing it, but we had one neighborhood we were working on is just some simple changes in how the vehicles will move through a roundabout, could create a big pocket of public space at the center of the roundabout, and it would also reduce the traffic. So solutions like this, that we keep analyzing the solutions.
Yeah, I wanted to ask something about this, but then this is also good because we are moving to the next segment, which we have longer time, where it's an existing solution, and we've seen it now, where it's an existing solution, and now we'll try to see what works and what doesn't work, and we'll look into it. Because I wanted to ask, if it's going to be a public space and it's a roundabout, of course, vehicles are going around it. How will the people get there? So will there be crosswalks? The pedestrian lane, and then so it's not a continuous, because they have to stop and people have to cross to get there. And now isn't it like a bit dangerous? How is it as far as security is concerned with accidents? How is it?
The solution that we propose, it's a massive roundabout, and it has a lot of thoroughfares and underpasses and overbridges, and also like the traffic, the pedestrian signals. So things like that. It's a roundabout that is also soon going to be converted into a station. So there are series of buildings encircling the roundabout.
Wow, okay.
And and then you get a center of it that you can open up for public for enjoying the space.
Wow. Is it a private project, or is the government part of it too? Or is it a partnership?
It's an idea that we pitched to the city council, that you could just do this, and it's very easy to do. So we came up with all the solutions of how it can be done, and now it's up to them to move forward. They actually started doing it. Then unfortunately the mayor we were working with, he passed away, the mayor of Dhaka North, and then there was a new election, the new administration came, and our effort kind of is stalling. But probably it will go forward at some point.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that is quite clear. You have this idea, and you have been trying to put it forward so the community would, and then the government. Of course, it has to be. That's why these are the questions that we can ask now: how the local governments can scale it, and then support it. Because this is true, no? It's a lot of politics and economics that come into play, no? When we have solutions like this, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Because
But this is good. Yeah, I think it's common in a lot of our cities, no?
lot of
Yeah.
money
Because I
involved.
see
The
it.
moment you put forward a project like this, everybody would think that where is my cut? If the government is
Oh,
doing it,
yes.
how do I make money out of it? That's the only question everybody asks. So,
Okay. This is painful.
but the
yes.
way we do things is we look into problem and we solve it. No matter whether we are getting the project, no matter whether somebody is coming to us, doesn't matter. So we
Yeah.
keep looking at the city, we keep doing our research, we find the problem, our team of designers jump into designing something for it, and then we give it away often that, bhai, this is the solution, go get it, go do it. And it's something that you already have the means to do. It's your land, you already
I
have
am
the
amazed
budget,
how, yeah.
fix it. So that's how Bengal Institute approached solutions.
Yeah. It's amazing how we can totally align. No, now if I'll be very strict to the time, we have about 3 minutes. Deepak, would you like to say something about
Okay,
your experience too? Yes.
thank you. As I was working in Department of Urban Development and Building Construction under Ministry of Urban Development, and I am retired government of Nepal job uh, 3 years ago, and now I am in a project, new Eastern Kathmandu New Township Development Project, where we are initiating for the new towns, and I'm working as a project manager over there. And 3 municipality of Kathmandu, that is Gokarneshwar municipality, and Kageshwari Manara municipality, and Sankarapur municipality. 3 municipalities jointly has created this project. So there is innovative and creativeness of having a neighborhood planning, so that it should not be haphazard. They are these 3 municipalities are in the eastern side of the Kathmandu Valley. Okay, it will be about 1300 acre hectare area will be there along the Bagmati River, and we have prepared some of the plants. Next time I can show you that plants also. So I think that will be an example in the future. But when I was in the job, I have a plan developed in Kathmandu. Although I was district commissioner of Kathmandu district, the plan was implemented in another district, and it has been implementing um, that place, that is Dibbeshwari, under the different municipality, not in Kathmandu. That actually took place. That was the Dibbeshwari line pulling project. Okay, that is a type of line pulling project where people and the people share their land for the development of that area. About 20 to 30% they give their land for the development of the infrastructure. It may be physical infrastructure like uh, that is road, electricity, water supply, all that. And I have developed that the 3 model of open space and park also for the different age group also, and for the public also, for that neighborhood can enjoy that open space, and there it has been taken place. And along the river I created all this that a buffer zone, and which has been taken as a park also now. It's a garden, flower garden, and it is used as a morning walk or evening walk for the people also. That sort of now it has been nearly completed. I was there for the 2 years only, but after my concept, it has been going on because I retired after that concept. I could not continue, but it is going on. I think the plan has been approved. It will be fulfilled. Our friends from Kathmandu can visit the Vishwari Line project at any time. They want to, if they want to visit that place, I can help them also. It's a good place for that. Now, every evening there is many people visiting nowadays in that place, and I have controlled the landslide also, so that this place can be made as a garden also. Now the trees are there, grasses are there, so the landslide had been also be controlled, and this way we help the local neighborhood also. Now the local neighborhood they use this area for the bypass road also. For traffic jam, they use this neighborhood for their driving to other places also cross by. That's the thing I've done.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Deepak.
Question I can give you we can talk about these also.
Yeah, sure. But we are right now
about my new project. I can present time also. Give me some time. So I have 10 minutes this video clips also. How we are going to develop this new area.
That's good. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you so much.
Deepak,
I can imagine.
Share it in the chat, maybe. Then we can
Yes, maybe we can the link. So you can look at it later, right? If you can, give us the link on the chat. And now I'm thinking really that a lot of the solutions that we are finding for the city is closely related to how we will survive this pandemic. Now, if I was also thinking here in the Philippines, it was just started by one community. They opened a community pantry and they just put it out there, and then everyone started giving in. Of course, there are a lot of setbacks because some people just started to bring in and finish everything. But then it was tempered by like, no, you don't do that. You just take what you need, and then tomorrow it'll be back here, and then you just take what you need. And before we know it, it's all over the country, and even East Timor got that idea. And so we were thinking that empowerment with the people. I am very much in agreement with what was earlier said, that it's not, we cannot just depend on the government, but really have to move ourselves, no, to find solutions. And we can actually maybe influence the government if they start to listen. Now, I would like to ask all of you to open your mics. Don't, if it's possible, if at most, because now we'd like to enter into a 10-minute thing that you may speak up or just write it down on the chat. We call this a rapid ideation. We'd like to ask you to put down any ideas, any possible solutions that you can suggest, and it doesn't even have to be concrete. The wilder the idea is, the better, and then we'll write it all down. I'll give you also possible ideas here. For example, it can be existing in your country, and you think it will, maybe you think it will work, but some other people know. So you just put it forward. It may be, it should be, it could be a simple solution. Just not to worry whether it will work or not, or if it is realistic or not. If it's crazier, it's better. And then we build upon these ideas, because the idea is for us to have as many solutions that we can put forward. Okay? So like what we have already discussed in the innovations, straight down through what exists, what are the other ideas that you think might work? Like I'm saying really a community pantry, because it draws out the kindness in each one. And before you know it,
some are just shy, they can share. And then also a community farm is what I have in mind. How about you? We can even overlap because Kavya is very
Yeah,
agile.
I will have to leave soon.
Yeah.
So I would put forward one idea that I was working on several years back that worked at some level, but it didn't go forward much. But I'm sure it can be replicated in other cities as well. The idea was very simple. It's architectural level, not urban design. That is, we approached some of the biggest brands of the city and convinced them about transforming all their public facilities equipped with universal accessibility equipments. For example, ramps for wheelchair and floor tiles for the visually impaired people, and also audible audible sound in the elevator, and all these little things that you can change in the building to accommodate people with disabilities. Now, many of these changes are actually easy to make. Like, your building may not have a ramp, but it's easy to make a makeshift one with a wood or something and put a sign on your building that it is wheelchair accessible. Now, what we did, a bunch of architects and some other activists, we came up with a guidebook, and also not exactly a guidebook, it's just a few flip of pages, and also
Yeah.
the resources that who can you reach out to for helping you doing this. So we made some of the biggest brands pledge about this, that they will do this, and they started doing it. Some of those facilities were retrofitted with ramps and these changes, and they are now accessible to disabled people with disability.
That's
So this
great.
probably can be a movement in every city, and you can start changing the building that doesn't offer this facility. But
That's
yeah,
great.
I'll have to
Yeah.
leave. Sorry.
Thank you, Tawhid. Thank
No
you. We'll
problem.
be in
It
touch.
was really nice
Yes.
being here.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Bye. How about you, Deepak? What quick idea do you have that could be, something we can do to improve the situation, just to change mindsets and to start something new?
Actually, I've not cracked such things, but in my opinion, we can do better when there is a, for example, we are in our project also where we want to change our things because like electrification cables, and different types of the cables are hanging all around in the neighborhood. We are trying to fix all these things. Due to this also there is a hazard also due to the cables hanging all around, and I have tried this all for the underground cabling also in the last project also. Now in my new project I am trying to all the change this process of doing hanging cables, electrical or internet cables, all these things. The utility, we want to build utility corridor along the road so that these all the cables can be removed from our roads. That we are planning in our project. So this is also will be new for the resident of the Kathmandu in the neighborhood, uh, actually. And for the
Wow.
treatment or waste management also, we want to make the solid waste and wastewater treatment plant also in a neighborhood so that it can be treated in a small quantity, not in the large quantity in an area, but in small quantity within the neighborhood. So so there is no problem of transportation for a long distance. As we are facing difficulties nowadays in Kathmandu, we have to go about 20-25 kilometers away from the Kathmandu Valley, and sometimes the local people hamper it. They do not allow to dispose the solid waste also. That is also one thing. We are trying two things in our project. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we are trying to
Okay.
do. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
you, Deepak. Thank you.
Yeah, Deepak ji,
Yes.
I'd like to build something around that as well. So it's also around waste that we tried a couple of years back. So I think when we went out and we wanted to, make people aware of all this waste management and stuff and all those things, we understood that this is not their top one priority, and they need to be driven by some sort of incentives. So we thought that what would be the sector or segment to go after, and how can we start about going about the human behavior change. So what we did is we essentially started focusing on hotels, because what happens is in a hotel there is already a built system that takes care of cleanliness, right? That is very utmost priority to them. So what we did is we actually put out 4 different dustbins in hotel, and for different categories, for glass, for paper and stuff. And we asked the local staff to actually start filling in the dustbin. And once those dustbins get filled up to a certain extent, we can come and we used to collect that, and we used to actually pay them against those whatever waste we used to collect, right? So what happened is now the staff was really motivated to sort of make some side income on the side, and then we started with the recyclables, and then slowly we also started moving towards the other food waste, which we then started collecting and sending it out to different farms and stuff. So I think the whole idea here was basically that there's a lot of spread around the sort of population that we can cater to, but if we can find out some specific, the early low-hanging fruits that we can target and maybe inculcate or build the habit on, that would really help us. So yeah, that is what we did personally. Just sharing that on top of whatever you said.
Yes, this is like segregation, right?
Yes,
because
yes.
Actually, yeah, because it actually starts from the households or where the waste is created. This is true. I was also thinking, right here, we're spreading the word that if you eat a fruit, don't throw the seeds. Keep it and then find a way to plant it and then watch it grow also. And then talk about it, because sometimes you do a good thing and then you just do it among yourselves. But now we take advantage of because it seems like the only way we really get in touch with people is through the internet. And so you post it in social networking like this. I mean, a lot of people post a lot of nonsense. Maybe if you post the good things that you do, it inspires other people also. So maybe that could be a good one, right? And then also when you talk about circular design, like when I buy something, you buy maybe in bulk rather than in small pieces, and then talk with your neighbor. Maybe you can share. When you go out to the groceries, so that you buy in bulk and then you just have it between the two of you, and maybe less waste also, and then talk about it. I think maybe that's a big thing here, that whatever good thing that you do, let's post and use our social networking and take advantage of the community that we build online also. Okay, do we have no more time? So how do we proceed, Kavya?
I think we have a couple of minutes before we have to go back. Gaurav is the one actually taking us back. So maybe Gaurav, you can let us know how much time we have. And then until then, we can just keep discussing innovation.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask for us who are still left here, if you can write down, you share 3 insights. It could be like, speak up, or you can write in the chat. How this workshop has been for you, this breakout group about the mindsets, how it has been. Yeah.
Hi, yes, and we also have Kanij, who's just joined us. Hi, Kanij.
Kanij.
Hi, I'm from Bangladesh actually. I joined a bit late and I'm not quite sure, like, what are you guys discussing on the mindset?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Which we all have. Right, where we're from. I'm sorry, which city do you come from?
I'm from Bangladesh. Dhaka.
Bangladesh. Yes, Dhaka. Yes. So I don't know if we have time now. When you say mindset, what is a strong mindset that runs in your city as far as you're concerned?
Well, one thing in Dhaka is that everybody is here for a temporary situation or such a short time. I mean, everybody wants to leave whenever they can, whenever they get holidays or so. So I think Dhaka, what is missing here is the belongingness. people don't feel like they belong here, or this is their city. And when something is not yours, you don't take care of it.
You're right.
So yeah, so that's the problem here. I mean, I think we treat Dhaka like a trash. We take the most advantages, but then don't take care of it.
Wow, that's strong. That's strong. And how nice if like we would be able to react to this now. Like, you know, we were talking about innovations, and we thought that maybe something quick, something that doesn't cost much, and then that could be like what, guerrilla urbanism, that you do something on your own with your friends,
Yeah,
and make changes like those, right? Yeah.
yeah,
If
yeah.
you have ideas like this, I throw the question to you. Please write on the chat, just so you're not cut off, because the whole idea is like, what innovations do you have in mind that could be probably a way for us to react to certain strong mindsets that are in our cities? Write it down, and then maybe there's something that's already happening. Is it working? And then who benefits from this these solutions that you see, like people maybe creating more belongingness, but does it work? And then what could possibly, please write it down just in case, but you can also share it here until the time we need to close. And then yeah, immediately, yeah, what do you think as a response to the lack of belongingness, as you said?
One thing that could be done, like, we can integrate people more with the city, like with the city system. Say when we talk about city transport, maybe it is such a segregated system from the users. Like what users want, the system doesn't know. So that integration is needed, so that the user also feels that, okay, my needs are being, my voices are being heard. That maybe I need a seatbelt. Maybe I'm a pregnant woman and I need a seatbelt. So this sort of thing, and maybe the users or the people can actually communicate this to the city authority, maybe using some app, like where they can say, like, what is the problem with the bus they have just the ride. So that's how maybe some integration communication is needed to make people more included in the system.
I'll also like to suggest one solution. So I think one thing that I've seen is pretty worked out in some other part of the world is basically if you could have an internship program or some sort of a way wherein people can go and experience the other side of their life. So let's say I was in this city called Jaipur in India, and what program they basically had that you could go into the prison and then spend at least like a month or 15 days there, as a prisoner, right? So let's say if we could replicate that sort of program maybe for the slums or maybe from other areas, then what that does is that basically leaves a very deep lasting impact on you, right? I think signs of it can be seen in Israel as well, where everybody is like asked to go into the army. That is how patriotism agree and all, right? So I think if you could have some actors or people in trying to live the way other people live, that leaves a very deep lasting impact, and maybe forces us to think. So that could be one of the potential solutions. Yeah.
That's true, especially for us who work in schools, for instance. If we could like incorporate it in the class that they go, and then maybe just to get to know the people. It happened to us, and sometimes the poor people, they would say, yeah, but you're just here with your promises. So what we did is like we observed how they worked, and there were 2-foot bridges on top of a river. And then what we did is like we designed a bamboo pavilion that connected, and it created a public space for the people who are there, and they will come to visit. And then they said, now these people are real. And then we only had 1/4 of the actual funds that could be used because it's a school activity. Now we have written about it, and then I have found a funder, and now we're going to build it actually. And so the people are happy. But it's not just the structure, but we created also a social program that's for sustainability, and it's made of bamboo. And so now you've reminded me about it, and just maybe we'll share about it as it goes along. But really to write down proposals such as this, because there are people who actually have the funds, and they're looking for people like us who have these ideas. Maybe we can marry this together, and then we can do something concrete for the city. Right? Yeah. So good, Kanish. Yeah. As I've said, you can please share your insights of the short part of this discussion that you've had. What's your impression of it, and what stuck to you? No? How do we go about the reporting?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that. So I think we've, since both Deepak and Kanij joined a little later,
Yes.
Joey, would you be comfortable just in 2 to 3 minutes in the plenary, just going over everything we've talked about? And I've taken notes, and I'm happy to share the.
Yeah, you took notes?
Yes.
Yeah, because I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was actually thinking of the 2 guys who left, but then they left. So
yeah.
Yes, no problem. We continue, but we hope we can we continue to be in touch, Deepak and Kanij, and of course Gaurav and Kavya also. Great ideas, really. It has inspired me, and now I'm thinking of a lot of things from my own city. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and we hope to see you again, and then maybe we can invite more of our friends, because this is really worthwhile, this thing that we're doing. We hope to see you again. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I will invite my friend also.
Yes, let's do
I will
that.
invite my colleague also.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kavya and Gaurav also.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Nice conversation. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Going to have a very intimate and safe discussion today. Yeah, so I think just a quick technical announcement to start off with. We are recording the session, as you know, and are having we're going to also share it on a Miro board if you are comfortable with it. So I will I'll screen share it, as well as drop the link into the chat here. But please feel free, if you're more comfortable, to share things in the chat or just chat verbally. I'll also be taking notes. So, and I think that's it on my side. Over to you, Purnima.
Thank you very much, Dori. So we have Adeshji from Kathmandu and Arpaji from Dhaka. So I think we can start our discussion on access. So I guess both of you can access the Miro board. Just let me know if you can.
Yeah, I'll just quickly screen share here.
Yeah, got it.
Great. So let's start. Like earlier, there was a brief about what actually, are we trying to focus on in access. So there might be different understanding for different people regarding access, right? Because we talk about within access, it can be access to health, access to sanitation, access to fundamental needs of the people, as well as how to make it more, accessible to people who are disable and so on. So I just wanted to know from your perspective, what access means to you from your end, and if you can write it down in the Miro board, that's great, or you can also like unmute yourself and please feel free to express your views towards access. What initial things come in your mind when you hear the word access? Because for me, it's more almost like most of the time it's if we are trying to have some kind of ideas or solutions, it needs to be disabled friendly, or it needs to be child friendly, or it needs to be if you are in the rural areas and you are doing some kind of working on digital aspect, it needs to be access to information and technology. But from your perspective, from what you have been working on, what it actually means to you guys. So please feel free to jot down. ideas.
If it's distracting to have the music, we can also turn it off. It's a new feature on Miro, so.
So we have 10 minutes time to frame and discuss about this issue. And if you have also any questions on it, maybe we can have for the one-to-one discussions.
And I think everyone here is quite comfortable with Miro, but just in case, if you just double click on the Miro board itself, a new sticky will pop up.
Can I ask just a clarifying question? When you talk about access, is there anything you mean in particular, access to information?
It can be anything. We just want to know, like, what, in your opinion, when you listen, like, hear about access, what comes to in your mind first, so that we can frame the discussion accordingly. Because it might be different for different people.
I think I just wrote what Adish kind of said, because for me, when I think about it, it's like the access to information, that you are aware the first that these things exist regarding like services or urban opportunities itself.
Dori, can you please minimize the volume, because I hardly hear our Baji's. Sorry for that.
So should I say again?
Sorry, I think you have to control the volume on your side.
Okay.
I've turned it
because if I will control my volume, our Paji's sound is also like going down.
Okay.
I couldn't hear her properly.
Let me just stop. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Of course.
Yeah. Arpaji, can you please repeat, because I couldn't slightly hear you when you were speaking about access to.
Yes, I was talking about access to information. The fact that whether the people are even aware of what is available for them should be, for me at least, what I think is the first thing that comes to my head. Whether they're aware of their basic rights. Like these are like the very, very basic things. I think I wrote it, but it's too small, so I'm glad someone else is writing that down. Thanks. Yeah.
And what are these, especially like you are talking about access to information. So what specific information do you want to reach out to? Is there any kind of services that you want to reach out, and is there a problem associated with it? Do you want to clarify on that point as well?
Yes, I think, of course, there's like a lot of different categories when we talk about access to information, but I do want to focus more on the fact that, for example, if you think about my country, like what are the urban developments that are happening around? What are the processes that the government is implying on those? Do I have the information regarding those in the websites? Even if I do, does the information clears me about the targets? Does it clear me where I stand or where my participation comes in the picture? We don't have those things back home, if I'm being completely honest. Even if we go onto the government websites, they are very basic information, but it's something that doesn't cover, as me being a citizen, that I should be aware of. Maybe the timeline of the project, what are getting invested in the project. As me as a citizen, where is my scope to participate in it? So we are not aware of those things. Those things are not available. Not even as a student, I could be aware of all the projects under the government. I could only see the titles on the website and who was the person under the project was for. So me being a student, was difficult for me to know about the government's current planning projects or architectural projects. Like this information is not there except the title or the number of hospitals that are getting built. But what are the opportunities that these hospitals are giving people? Which place it is? What are its targets? Has it considered anything? No background information. So these are the very basic things I felt that as a professional where I come from was missing for me and also for the general people.
That's a very valid point. I think I can also see the link between the information and the opportunity that you are trying to link here, because with the lack of the information, there is a lack of opportunity for those who actually want to be part of that specific project, right? So I can clearly see those links that you are trying to bring in. It's a very valid point that you have brought up.
Purnima, I also have a
Adish, yes, Gaurav.
Yeah. So I think when I think about access, for me, it basically boils down to two major things. One is I would like to relate it somewhat to some sort of freedom as well, and also to resources. So by freedom, I basically means that, oh, you might want access to a lot of things, but then what is public and what is private? That is number one. We have to go deeper and see as to what all comes under access in terms of public and private, what should be in public and what should be for private. Number two, I think in terms of resources, I think again it boils down to like maybe we want access to something, but do we have the resource as well? And then probably I would like to link it to that point as well, like are we also thinking about building up the resources itself? So maybe some access might require some sort of resources or capital in general. So like a capital not just being monetary, but it could be intellectual capital, it could be any sort of other capital as well. So maybe for me it would be like looking when I think about access, I also tend to think about the rights that are associated with it and the resources that might come in handy.
Maybe with the resources, it might be like, as you said, it can be related to human resource or related to investments, right? So yeah, that's a very valid point, Gaurav. Also, I can see this point on access to services or urban opportunities. May I know who has written that, and do you want to come in and just explain about it?
I typed that in for ARPA, I think. I thought you had said something along those lines, ARPA, but maybe I'd misheard. ARPA? I'm not sure if they're there.
I think she tried to link the information and information with the opportunities. That there was a linkage on that. I'm not sure whether she tried to touch on the access on the services part. Do you want to come in, ARPA, and just give a brief on that?
Talk about services. I think for me that's the thing. I think the service comes later, because for me that even if you're not aware of the services that are available for you, then what's the point of even having the services if you're not aware of that it's actually available to you? So yeah, I think the first, because a lot of people, even if they see it, I feel that at one point, if you're not even interested, you get interested into something because it's you glance through it. So the fact that you're aware that it's available it's the first thing, at least how I see it.
If I could come in quickly. All right. Yeah, I really agree on everything that's been said so far, and particularly around the information side. And I think maybe Gaurav mentioned it briefly, or someone else mentioned it briefly, but the social capital that is so necessary to have access is very, especially my experience has been more in Kathmandu, where essentially a lot of information that is disseminated and knowledge about resources, knowledge about opportunities is very much based on who you know. And whether you have access to, I mean, I think the internet is a great thing, but not everyone has the.
Because I cannot hear Dory.
We can hear Dory.
You can hear me?
We can hear you. Maybe with, I think that there might be some problem with ARPA.
Okay, yeah, but I'm also having quite unstable internet, so yeah, so let me know if you can't hear me. But yeah, so I think just to sum up, that social mobility, I think, has a lot to do with access, and that movement, very intangible movement within kind of cultural and social norms, I think it has a big impact on access.
completely agree with Dory. I think there is aspects of social aspects as well. And also wanted to add a few points on, especially related to how we can reach those who are not accessible. Probably the information technology has been covered, but if you see those people who are left behind, who are the vulnerable groups, sometimes they don't have this particularly they cannot they are not too much linked, they don't have much networks, and so they are slightly they don't get the right information at the right time. So I think we also need to focus on those groups. Sometimes these people might not, let's say they don't have the internet access, or they don't have this communication access, but there should be some other ways around to reach those who are not reached, right? So we need to be very much, we need to think about how we can, leave no one behind, and especially those who are vulnerable groups. So that's very important, I guess, especially when we are talking about access. Yeah. So do we have? Do you want to touch upon anything, Adishji, from your end?
Sure. Just a small point that it's important to distinguish access versus choice. Oftentimes we might consider access as a general good thing, but it depends on who has created this access to services, right? And if these services are based on the requirements of the population that needs it. So just only creating access to services that nobody is going to use, or a limited percentage can actually use, doesn't necessarily means there is access. So there needs to be ownership over creating that access to those resources, so that we have the sort of better usage rate and so on and so forth. We don't want to have a situation where we create access to something that seems more as a limited option, more like an obligation, rather than something that, okay, this is actually what we actually want. So yeah, that's the only point I really had to put forward.
Mm-hmm. So do you also have some kind of suggestions how we can make this choice available to everyone? Just a follow-up question on that, Adishji.
Not particularly. I haven't worked for cities and municipalities, so I'm not really sure how that can happen. But I do know from my experience, about 10 years ago, we had a visioning session in Chinatown in New York, and basically so there was this community that would necessarily never interact with the city or project development. But there was this sort of translated session where the community would have this visioning session for what they wanted for their community. And it was kind of like what we're doing right now, working on a sort of board and coming up with ideas. And so that whole process, I mean, however limited it was, it still created an opportunity for those people to participate who would necessarily never be included in sort of that kind of urban development. So having that be available to them, maybe that'll be the first session that isn't highly, impactful, but that kind of creates a chain of other events coming in the future. So having that be available, I think is very important. The city must work hard in order to create sessions and opportunities where other people can participate and access, right? And I think Gaurav mentioned it before. You can't have if everything you're creating is online and only a certain percentage can access it, then it's not really access. So that's it.
Thank you, Adishji. Arpa, do you want to come in and just give your thoughts on what kind of suggestion would you give to make sure that there is this, as you shared, to make the bond stronger between the information and the opportunities? Arpa, are you back?
Not sure if maybe she's having issues with connection, but I actually just wanted to quickly comment while we're waiting for her to join on Adisha's examples. I think it's a great point around, you know, the assumption of what people need. That's always been the case for those who are marginalized and don't have as much of a platform and don't have the microphone. So usually people who are speaking about what they need and about the access that they need is they're coming from a different perspective. And we had a bit of a, you know, last event, we also had a bit of an awareness moment in the Dhaka breakout room around, well, you know, everyone here is coming from very fairly privileged backgrounds. And what we need to do is be able to create the platform for those who are not, who do not normally get to speak for themselves to be able to do so. And in that way, you know, that's one of the reasons why we came up with this, the sub-thematic area of representation as well. But I think, you know, the idea of access is also then framed based on the people who are needing that access. And so we also need to be able to move the kind of camera and move the lens to the people who, you know, who we may perceive to not have access, but also what access are they looking for? What you know, what do they view as opportunity? And what have they been fighting for? Maybe there are small ways that they've been fighting for access to certain things that we're not aware of. So I think that's important. And when you're creating those channels of communication and participation, those things can come out more easily.
Completely agree to the point that Dori echoed. So just wanted to also add few points that you know, I think it's slightly related to what Adishi mentioned earlier. There is also this session that we promote, especially within the UNDP Extra Lab Nepal, which is called Collective Intelligence. So what we usually do is that to make sure that the voices of the people are heard, you know, who are in the community, for whom we are trying to bring the project. So we try to have this collective intelligence session with these community members, so that their views, their ideas towards projects are captured from the earlier, you know, a phase of the project itself, so that we can adapt and change accordingly as we move ahead. So, you know, it's kind of making sure that people who are, as both Dori and Adish mentioned, who are not reachable, could be at least, you know, are involved in these kind of discussions. So yeah, I just wanted to add that point over. What's the, how much time do we have? Because I can't see the timing in my mirror board somehow. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think we should move on to the innovation sparking now, if that's all right.
Okay. Thank you. So let's move on to the second round, that's innovation sparkling. So just want to give like some kind of ideas that Extra Lab Nepal has been working on, especially that's related to access. So what we have been doing is we have been working, as I've mentioned earlier as well, in the main room, that we have been working on two major points. One is urbanization and another is unemployment. So within the urbanization challenge, what we have done is we have try to create a small accessible pocket park, which is accessible especially to wheelchair users. So to create that small pocket park, we did, you know, partner with various stakeholders, which included Briksha Foundation, WWF, and the Lalitpur Metropolitan City Office. So together with these similar, you know, like-minded stakeholders, we created this prototype of accessible pocket park in Pulchok, which is a very small pocket park, very close to Alka Hospital. And during the designing phase itself, we started having conversation with the local community, and we try to, you know, incorporate what are their thoughts about constructing a pocket park? Does it make sense to them or not in the already existing public area, open public space, which was being especially misused? So we thought about it would be a great idea to use this misused public space into transforming into a better breathing space for the people. So we had this conversation with the community, and we created, we incorporated their ideas in the design, and tried to make it more wheelchair friendly. So after the construction, I think it happened we started in November 2019, and it was handed over to the Metropolitan City Office in early 2020. So after a year now, what we are trying to do is, it's been a year now, and we want to see the change of this pocket park, and the objective of the park was to make it more accessible to the local community, and to make it more accessible to the visitors who want to, as well as to those people who visit the hospitals. If they don't have space to wait in the hospitals, they can also come to the park and wait. So we wanted to also ensure that the visitors to these business areas closer to the park can also come and wait and have more peaceful environment in the city center. So after creating, we thought that, okay, what our objective was, has it been made or not? So currently what we are doing is we are trying to have this behavior insight research. What changes has that park brought to the lives of the people, as well as what changes have brought to the decision making of the government. So we are doing that research currently, and what we found, the very interesting finding was that though we incorporated as many community people as possible within the park, there has still been areas of improvement, and I think that's what it's all about, especially when you are talking about access, right? There are always areas of improvement, especially related to, we try to include accessibility for the wheelchair users. And when we saw that there were visitors, especially who were people with visually impaired people who were psychosocial disability. So there are various kinds of disability associated, right? It's not only wheelchair users. So the aspects of these other visitors who were not wheelchair users, but other than that, like for example, visually impaired people had their own needs. So we try to only cover one aspect of the disability, and try, we might have missed out other aspects. And this research was very helpful to open our eyes, open our perspective on how we need to be, more human-centric, how we need to be more inclusive towards other aspects of disability as well. So that was one of the very interesting points that we found. And though we try to incorporate these in the design framework itself, somehow it still needed reiterations and changes. So that's a very interesting findings, which might be useful to the government, to the local government, who are now creating additional, I think that they have already 8 in plan, like they are constructing other 8 pocket parks within the city periphery, which might be very much useful for them to use this recommendation as a consideration to improve further. So yeah, that's an interesting insight that we found from our perspective of access to services, and even for the mobility section as well. We are promoting sustainable urban mobility, and as mentioned earlier, we have right now been trying to make sure that people use as much as electric vehicles and vehicles which are more environment friendly. So we are trying to promote these people who are using these kind of electric vehicles or cycles, by giving them opportunity and providing them tokenized systems, so that people who are using it will get benefit from it, it might be small benefits, like it's small tokens, but it's like a gaming system as well. So we are trying to do this, motivating people through incentivizing them for their activities. So this is one of the innovative aspects that we are looking forward to. So yeah, that's the innovation that UNDP ACT Lab is working on. But maybe we want to hear from you, like if these kind of innovations could be applicable at your areas of work or in your city or not. So maybe I want to know more from Adishji and Arpaji or anyone from Utopia team.
Hi, I think I've missed out on the very beginning because the sound was off for me. But I think we're talking about like this new innovation processes that are being used or going to be used in our cities. Am I correct?
Sorry, I didn't hear you properly. You mean these will be used?
No, I'm saying that are we supposed to talk about these innovative strategies that are newly being used in our cities or are going to be implemented?
So, the example I mentioned, especially on Pocket Park and related to the incentivizing people with some kind of tokens to motivate them on using sustainable urban mobility. So these kind of systems can be. Is there a possibility to use this kind of methods in your cities as well or not? Will that be applicable from your perspective or not?
Okay, yeah. I think not exactly on urban mobility, but in Bangladesh, we have this group of architects called community architects named POCA, and they have been working in various small secondary cities, but especially their work base is in Chinaga, and they're working with informal settlements. So they have been doing housing projects. They started their practice with housing projects, but now they are working on more very specific issues, such as collective seeds of the indigenous plants that are there. And they are really involving the youth to participate in this process. So they're targeting various stakeholders. And you were also talking about like the different groups, like the disabled and people. So yeah, I think in our country, it is needed to identify that there are different needs. And I think for any of such things, processes, I think in our culture where there is like such a gap between social classes, it is really needed to bring everyone together. It's very difficult to bring all these different needs together. I think that's one of our basic main problems. But these architects, they're trying to build networks in these small cities by trying to bring all of the people, these different actors of the urban city together. So I think for us, making people come together is one of the very first step, because in our culture, working together to solve a problem is not yet practiced, I think. And also we have another group called Para, where they're working in Dhaka, and they're specifically working with street children. And they're doing a lot of community involved works, play spaces, public spaces. And I think, and then we have another guy, he's called Garbage Man, and he's specifically working about waste management, and he's trying to, the last one of his projects were to work with the refugees in the Rohingya camps and how to create from waste handicrafts, so that at the same time they're recycling the products, but also giving them financial freedom by an opportunity to create a new process, like a new method of earning income at the same time. So yeah, I believe these things are happening and these will work, but I think the first step is how to bring everyone together and how to make people aware that people have different needs and you're not just alone. So for which we need strong networks. And I think like while studying here in Finland, I've seen that the architectural schools are very integrated with the government, like the local governments. So there are always collaboration between the government projects and the university, and the students do those projects before the government run them on their own. So I think we need such approach where even the young generation, the young professionals needs to connect with the government.
Thank you, Arpa. I think that's very valid because every time we talk about innovation or every time we talk about access, I think it's always to take it forward. It's either the community or the local governments. If we are talking about making these projects, or let's say making these innovation work for future as well. So if we are talking about sustainability, the aspects that you mentioned, especially involving the community and involving the needs of the community, as well as involving local government, is highly important. So thank you for that, Arpa. I also want to ask Adishji if he has any reflection on the ideas that I shared, or if you have any further ideas or solutions that's in your mind.
Well, I really enjoyed the example you gave us about the pocket park, and sort of seeming an innovation that seemed to solve issues, but also you realize that it wasn't actually benefiting everybody, or there were some limitations. So that part I kind of enjoyed. It was like it's a bit of an aha moment. So I enjoyed that. And regarding the sort of tokenized systems and gamifying things, and I think that's cities and municipalities have to be clever and creative in the way they engage their communities, and always having programs that are sort of seem more mundane and more like work can be not have the most amount of impact. So sort of creating like neighborhood competitions, but with the target service in mind. I'm just like gonna come up with some ideas here. Like, for example, if you had like a sort of competitive like community garden system or whatever, like who has like the best vegetables in their community garden or whatever, things like that kind of make it a bit creative. I mean, there's another thing that I really enjoy in terms of mobility is when groups sort of take over parking spaces, right? And so they like convert parking spaces into children's like playgrounds, just sort of create this idea that, hey, parking uses a lot of space in the city, right? So who can come up with the most like innovative like use of a parking spot or something like that? So these kinds of things I think do push the boundaries of like what urban space use can be and how to kind of use it. So yeah, I think like making a sort of creative outlet is very important and very engaging.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the reflection. Involvement citizen in this creative work is highly important. So yeah, thank you for that. Also, if there is any reflection from the Utopia team, please feel free to come in, or shall we move on to the next?
I think let's move on to the next one, and then maybe we can add as we go along. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So talking about the existing solutions which are not compatible for the current scenario. Just wanted to know from your perspective, if within your city, your area of location, have you seen or have you heard about any of those solutions which have been taken forth by the community, government, or organizations, but it has not been doing well, or that there has been some issues related to making it owned by the community or local government, or making it owned by making it more sustainable for the long term. So if you have known, or if you have seen such kind of solutions at a local area, please feel free to jot down in the Miro board, or please feel free to unmute yourself and also share. Please feel free to share your insights on that. I can see some points being written on informal settlement. Is this ARPA, if I'm not wrong?
That was me.
No, but that is surely one of the main things that happen in my city as well. So I agree. I completely do agree with that, with the person that.
Okay, is it Dory or anyone who entered that? Please, can you unmute yourself and share on informal settlements?
Yeah, it was me, but I'd love to hear Arpa's perspective as well. I think just quickly on my side, it's just, this is globally, but also have seen in Kathmandu that oftentimes, even if there's an intention of rehousing the displaced, it is not in the interest of the people who are being displaced. We know that people endure tough situations, tough living situations to be able to access economic opportunities, which means the location is key for people who are living in these areas. And oftentimes what happens is they focus too much on the housing aspect, the physical aspect, but not about access, not about how do you access livelihood, how do you access opportunities, how do you access education for the younger generations. And so that to me symbolizes the limited understanding of what access means to that population.
Yeah, I think that's really nicely said, because for us, this informal settlement displacement is such an everyday thing, because this one day you will wake up and you will see this big settlement that you saw last night is gone. So it's just like an overnight activity, and it's just what I like about the fact is that these people, even though they're pushed to that limit, they find the solution themselves. You'll see a new settlement growing in a matter of 1 or 2 days, because for them that's the basic needs that are getting getting taken away from, like their basic rights of living in a certain place. And of course also the pedestrian thing, someone wrote that back home there are places we do not even have a proper pedestrian to access to, and it is one of the biggest problems for mobility. Even if we have them, they are not properly maintained over time. So it doesn't like really not work. And of course, when there's new construction and there are new roads being made, the lighting of those roads are not really done at the same time. So of course that doesn't ensure people's safety, especially vulnerable groups of women and children, to walk on those scenarios. Yeah. And of course, one of the basic problems we have back home is lack of parking spaces, for which I think parking comes over the roads, creating massive amount of traffic. So I think lately we had this massive change in the traffic route in one of our primary roads, and that extended people's driving time in that area to more than like extra 20 minutes, and everyone is complaining. But did they take people's participation in the process? No, they just went and they just made it. And now every day people are complaining about it on social media, but is that the platform to complain about? Whom do we talk to about these things it's a problem? I mean, my professional people are also complaining. If we as architects don't know whom to complain to, that's a worry.
Thank you for those points, Arpa. I think you clearly mentioned that we when we are talking about solutions, we tend to look at only one aspect of it, and we don't look at the associated other infrastructures needed for it. For example, the one you rightly mentioned about when we are talking about road, we forget about lighting. When we're talking about one particular area of solution, we don't tend to look at other aspects. And also I completely agree with the point where you said that we miss sometimes, most of the times, including whom we are trying to bring the solutions to. We are not making them included in the discussions and decision-making processes. So I think these points are very valid, and thank you for bringing those up. I also want to know more on the I think it's, I'm not sure about this J-Bones paradox. Has this been covered by anyone who has written this? Can you please come in and explain?
Oh, just, yeah, I wrote that. It was just a quick note on certain solutions that actually end up creating a larger problem. That's the Jevons paradox, from what I understand. And the most commonly used example is building more traffic lanes to solve congestion, which in turn over time invites more people to drive, and then eventually you get more traffic and more congestion than you originally had. So instead of tackling the issue of congestion as only people with access to vehicles are driving, how do we move people a bit more efficiently? If the solution is actually, let's just create more lanes so that traffic will be eased, it actually ends up creating a bigger problem in the end. And you don't actually solve the problem of moving people around efficiently that you would do through public transit. So that's the Jevons paradox. And so that's just an example that can be used for other sectors as well, not just mobility.
True, completely agree on that. I think somewhere down the line, we sometimes do not include this futures thinking, long-term visioning. We try to then only, solve the current issues, and then somewhere down the line we forget what it might, bring the repercussion and at the long term.
Maybe inculcate or build the habit on. That would really help us. So yeah, that is what we did personally. Just sharing that on top of whatever you said.
Yes, this is like segregation, right?
Yes,
because
yes.
Actually, yeah, because it actually starts from the households or where the waste is created. This is true. I was also thinking, right here, we're spreading the word that if you eat a fruit, don't throw the seeds. Keep it and then find a way to plant it and then watch it grow also. And then talk about it, because sometimes you do a good thing and then you just do it among yourselves. But now we take advantage of because it seems like the only way we really get in touch with other people is through the internet. And so you post it in social networking like this. I mean, a lot of people post a lot of nonsense. Maybe if you post the good things that you do, it inspires other people also. So maybe that could be a good one, right? And then also when you talk about circular design, like when I buy something, you buy maybe in bulk rather than in.
Good, because then now people in different areas can access their own sort of mini business areas and they have better participation. So that's something that I was wanted to share about having. I guess this one's more related to the bit about access, but yeah.
So can you slightly drill it out, like especially related to how does this, especially decentralizing these business districts, how can we make it more, flourish, or make it more
sure,
usable and reachable to other people?
Yeah, I think now sort of forward-thinking cities have realized that having these massive centralized areas are unequitable because they only allow access to certain populations. And I don't know exactly about Nepal and Kathmandu, but in the global north and cities in the States, it's mostly if you have access to a car, then you're able to access these areas. And a lot of people don't have access to a vehicle, then therefore they're excluded from these areas, right? So now cities are thinking, okay, how can we kind of tweak this issue, and are creating sort of they're called like the 15-minute city or the 20-minute city. Ideally, anything that you need is within 15 to 20 minutes, distance from you. So your schools, your hospitals, your businesses, your residences. So they're all kind of like in the sort of decentralized pockets within the same city. And then those kind of like pockets make up a larger city, right? So not having everything be located in one area, but actually have these sort of decentralized pockets that will encourage people to walk more, have access to these places, be a bit more equitable. Yeah, so that's the kind of idea.
More towards like urban planning and aspects like that, right?
Yeah, this is definitely an urban planning issue. And if the city is already built where these sort of business districts exist. Obviously, like citizens might not be able to kind of influence that, but if you can kind of tackle that at the planning stage, then yeah, then that's a solution.
Because I think once the infrastructure is there, it's so difficult to change it. So I think it has to be planned beforehand by the authorities themselves, so that as you explain, it's more easier, it's more decentralized and on. So yeah, now let's looking at
that. Yeah, like exactly talking about this. I think, like for example, when we talk about Bangladesh, the first thing that comes in our head is Dhaka, a place where infrastructure is already built in so much layers. But why should development be only focused on something that's already built? We have other cities which still have the opportunities for better planning. So why not work on those cities? Why are we still stuck in a place where there's already so much complex? And I think that's why we also need to see the potentials that we have in the other cities and not just constrict ourselves to the capital, so that we can still implement these ideas and see whether it works there or not. Like, so I think secondary cities or tertiary cities should be our focus now, because the primary cities are already full of so much layers that, of course, it brings so much challenges at the same time.
True, completely agree on that. So looking at the time, we have just 5 minutes. So shall we move on to the rapid ideation stage? So here, just wanted to know more about you, what you think about, the solutions. So if you can jot down as many solutions as you can, especially related to access or any other aspects of development that we have been talking about. So please feel free to jot down the ideas, as many ideas that comes in your mind currently.
So I think we'll set a timer for 3 minutes for this, if that's all right. And then feel free to, as I just noted in the chat, feel free to directly put your ideas on sticky notes in the Miro board, or you can enter it into the Zoom chat, whatever is more comfortable for you. And yeah, and then just to let you know, this is just like a very rapid ideation session. You can think of really silly or really wild ideas. You can think about, future of robots or AI or machine learning, or you can go with something existing and simple solutions, even just to break the ice. And don't worry about whether it'll work or not, or if it's realistic. Oftentimes we say the nuttier the better. And this will also be an opportunity to build upon your own ideas and any insights that we've already discussed in the discussion here, or inspiration from other cities. So I will just start the timer now. Maybe no music, or maybe it's a bit too loud. Okay, so just 3 minutes here. And then everyone else in the room, please feel free to also jot down ideas, including yourself, Purnima.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. While we are working on this, I also would like to request if anyone of you want to share your insights in the main room.
I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
This is just like sort of summarizing our boards.
So you can share like major 3 insights from our whole discussion. What are the major 3 insights that you received, like that you found interesting, or your reflection on it?
Okay.
Thank you, Adeshji, for volunteering. So the breakout room will be closing in 30 seconds. Thank you everyone for your wonderful inputs. It was nice having conversation with you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for leading, Burning. Thank you for everyone's insights.
Solid metal door. And then they build this metal door toilet. And then after 2 weeks, that door is gone. And then they come back and they're like, oh, we spent so much money. Oh, how come you don't maintain it? And then they're like scolding the slum dwellers. And then later they found out that the slum dwellers, the women who actually removed the door because it was a community toilet, and the door was actually making the toilet unsafe. Because if someone went in, when a woman goes into the toilet and someone goes in and locks the door from inside, it's actually more like a trap. Rather, they put a curtain, and so it's actually safer without. I started realizing that the NGO, the designers and the engineers, they solved the problem without actually, the representation or kind of like the reality. And then they built it, and all of a sudden, all of that didn't work only because, to me, that the foundational problem was the lack of representation. And I'm just giving you like at least like one way I see that, this idea of how are we inclusive in our processes? How do we, bring the people that we say that we were solving the problem for, because we might say we're solving the problem for, the minor, like let's say the lower income, or but how do we bring them in? Kind of like that is my take on it. But of course, I'd love to hear from Niranjan, Samantha, and of course, Prabina and Gaurav. If you want to chip in, please do. Niranjan, Samantha.
So the question is, the prompt is, how do we think of representation, or like what exactly is it? Or are you asking very broadly?
Yeah, no, I'm asking very broadly, like, I mean, how would you, talk about, or how would you use representation to, let's say, tie different aspects of your experience? Let's say, like, I'm not particularly interested on a definition, but more like, can we use representation as a tool to, think through your experience? I mean, is it helpful for you to think about, is representation, or why are you interested in this topic, let's say, because, how do you relate to it, let's say?
Especially in South Asia, we have to directly talk about caste, class, gender issues.
Yeah.
And so absolutely, and for sure, there should be representation. I mean, when we look anywhere, especially in institutions that have power, like government or businesses or households even. I mean, it's a very patriarchal, upper caste dominated, male dominated, upper caste dominated societies. Representation should start from square one. Like whoever, even if it's one person starting a firm or a focus group, the first question should be, is this fair and representative of a diverse society, you know? Because if you don't start there, then it may not work, is what I feel.
Okay, yeah, no, so the idea of square one, I mean, that's a good way to put it. I mean, so even if it's like a small focus group, I mean, you can't really put it off. So it's not about down the line will become more inclusive. So how do you, I mean, that's the big challenge, isn't it? Like, how do you do it even initially? Samantha, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so just a little bit of context. I am a design professional. I work with architects and urban planners. And so when we're looking at inclusive design processes, what is typically missing is essentially what the European nations like to call social sustainability. What social sustainability is typically, it's not very well funded, but it's typically being sort of, these are dialogues, essentially, stakeholder engagement dialogues that are being held by municipalities. And I'm not saying that every single municipality in the global north does this, but I think the ones who are more interested in making sure that minority views or marginalized views are being heard or being seen are definitely putting resources down for that, right? And this is sort of case-by-case situation. It could also be a particular neighborhood within a city that is actually being run by a CSO with the blessing of the municipality, etc. And so what these dialogues tend to do is they actually tend to attract design professionals, because design professionals are so sort of starved. Like we can't put in our budget, for example, to say we want to hold stakeholder engagement dialogues, to go and look for CSOs to engage with local communities to actually start designing what they want, and to continually work with them iteratively throughout the design process to ensure that it's actually something that will be used, will be successful in the actual implementation, construction, and then, 10, 20 years after it's actually being used. This is actually what I think design professionals are looking for. They want to be able to do. However, when it comes to looking for essentially funding to be able to do that stuff, that tends to sit within essentially people like, for example, CSOs who are never ever have any experience in actual design or getting through regulations, or, have experience with construction or etc. So I think it's about bridging the gaps between silos here for me. And it's also about prioritizing funding for these sorts of dialogues, which are very much to do with design, but it's more around design about the kind of built environment that we want for what is, whatever urban well-being means in a particular culture, in a particular context, with regards to the particular future challenges that are being faced in that geographic location. I've seen a few municipalities do this badly, but I've seen a few neighborhoods doing it very well. Unfortunately, I've never seen the entire sort of complete process where there's, one place that really starts with this deep understanding and trying to build solidarity with each other. And then get to the point where they design something together, and design professionals are included in that situation, and they're involved iteratively, and then the thing gets built, and then everybody loves the thing, etc. I think I can think of one example in Sweden, for example, where there is an entire shopping mall that is for sort of repair. It's a circular economy shopping center that's in the middle of like nowhere. I mean, Sweden is basically nowhere, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
of course.
The fact is they're super rich, they're flooded with money. They don't know what to do with all the money that they have. So this is kind of how I see the situation coming from my design experience in Europe.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you have looked at the work by Assemble in the UK.
Sorry?
The work by Assemble in the UK.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
In North Yorkshire, there's also a really interesting community housing project, for example, which is essentially that people can't afford housing, so therefore they're making their own prefab. So there's an entire neighborhood. The thing is called Rebuild. It's really hard to find because it's such a generic name. But there's a community of people who are doing that, working out of literally garages. And the sort of architects who are volunteering to help them basically design prefab things to suit regulations are architects who live in that area. So they have a vested interest in ensuring that basically their neighbors are creating urban well-being together with them. But yes, like I said, I haven't seen examples here in the global south, or let alone in South Asia or Southeast Asia. And I definitely am looking for that. But again, it's about resources. It's about being able to actually put down the funding to make these things happen.
So if I just, bridge between what Niranjan was saying and you are saying, and from my own experience also here in Australia, I mean, would you say that it's much more problematic when you have like a highly stratified social structures, particularly in South Asia? I mean, Prabina, feel free to jump in here, because the notion of solidarity or bridging across different social groups, I mean, it's much more difficult in a highly stratified society. And if you have like a upper caste dominated power structure, so is it more problematic, not just because of the lack of resource? I mean, hold on to that of course, okay, there is a problem of lack of resource, but what about kind of like, what is your experience? Niranjan, feel free to chip in. What do you think about that? Like, would resources be enough to bridge that solidarity between, let's say, castes who have been dominating for centuries?
Yeah, no, I feel like, so the point I was focusing on earlier was not necessarily resources, but more mindsets and entrenched social beliefs and social systems.
Yeah.
And we know that money doesn't usually solve those problems, and it also takes a long time to change people's mindsets and social views. And in my experience, and it's very blatant in Nepal, where because of outdated beliefs, prejudices, like people are literally excluded from many spheres. And it also relates to our previous discussion, where, I mean, Kathmandu being centralized in the sense most of the country's resources is centered in the city, and people outside the city have been historically excluded. And even it connects to the question of what is the city for? Who is the city for? Is it only for those grown up in the city, or is the capital city, does it belong to everyone in the country? And how do you, so there's this big disconnect and lack of people agreeing on
who
that,
the city is for.
Yeah, on that very notion too. So
no, I mean, I can just say from my experience of Dhaka, because that's also pretty much 90% of the resources are spent in Dhaka, because it produces 40% of the total GDP. So, and like, who is a resident of Dhaka? I mean, that's always a very contentious question. Like a rickshaw puller who comes in from the rural areas for 6 months, stays in Dhaka, does rickshaw pulling on a part-time basis and goes back. Is he a resident? Should he be included in the, city's governance process? Because right now, of course, he doesn't have any say in, let's say, the traffic rules that dominates his life as a rickshaw puller, because literally his livelihood is dependent on traffic rules. But of course, he has absolutely no say and no possibility of any say, because he's not a registered, let's say, a voter, because his, the voting is done at his, point of origin, let's say. So what does it mean to be a resident of a city? And if we are kind of like looking to, because I think that goes to say that I think this is not a question of either or, it's a question of course, you would need resources to invest over a long period of time to change the mindset. So it's like, how do you bring that together? Sam, would you want to elaborate, I mean, from your experience, or that is it a problem also of the funding agencies that, you know, the notion of inclusivity for them is often quite tokenistic and they want things to be done on a very quick basis. So it's like, okay, just put up a team of like 10 representative people and, oh, it looks representative. Have you found that out? Or do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, so I have two main points to make here. The first one is that we have design solutions for that. There's such a thing called the advice process, where you're essentially engaging with the people experiencing the problems and understanding the problems, not just so-called experts who have, you know, studied like second, third-hand accounts, etc., and involving them within the design process. So that's called the advice process. And the second thing that you kind of brought up around this, the stratification, I just wanted to make the point that this is a function of our entire civilization of separation. So essentially our economy runs on the fact that people are pitted against each other in something that is a social construct, right? And so to try to tackle that is a ridiculous sort of big, crazy, hairy thing to do. And you can do that in a local context, but you must also make sure that, so just like Tanzil, you were saying about the transient nature of residents in urban areas, particularly in informal settlements, but obviously not just them. And this tackling for essentially not to undo the stratification, but to simply make it visible. So it's not to take down those walls really, because you know you can't do that just in one city or one neighborhood, but it's to make those walls a bit more see-through essentially, so that we can get to a situation where we can make so-called compromises. I don't think they're compromises really when you're sort of trying to work towards the urban well-being of most people. I don't think you'll be able to get 100%, but maybe we can get, you know, 75, 80, etc. And so those kinds of, I think, dialogues that I talked about need to be very carefully curated and facilitated because of, like you said, the toxicity around this intense hyper stratification that exists already just, you know, in society today because of globalized capitalism. But like I said, it takes resources to do these
capitalism
things,
and also intrinsic, like entrenched beliefs over hundreds of centuries.
It takes years to work through that stuff, like it or not, right? It takes a lot to actually build that in, and in some cases, it's really when you're working with young people who are involved in various, so essentially you can involve 200 different organizations within your city to come to these dialogues, but select the right people in those organizations to represent those organizations in trying to, you know, show face, be respectful, and also think a little bit outside of the conventions, right, of the particular culture in that place in order to try to work together to, you know, fix, I don't know, a design solution that has always existed in the city, for example.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like that point that you're trying to make is, it's not as simple as getting, you know, the 200 organizations into a conference hall. It's more like you really have to also get a feeling for how organizations work. And then how do you know who's the right people?
Precisely. So, this is all about power dynamics. And if we're trying to ease into looking at those power dynamics in order to design for that, then this is where like really intensively sort of, you know, it takes resources to hire the right people to know how to find, you know, move around this network to sort of curate that kind of space. And it also takes the right people because things will blow up whenever you have a space like that suddenly becomes a platform for power, for influence, etc. So how do you sort of navigate and also, you know, coming back to the original point you made, Tanzil, the fact that if you involve CSOs, they're not the ones experiencing the situation. And we have to also engage with people who are living, they have these lived experiences, but they're not comfortable with being in this sort of space to communicate these sorts of things. And maybe they don't have the right words, and maybe they are very triggered to be in spaces with, you know, the super rich, for example, or the organizations that are doing this to them in the way that they see it, etc.
I mean, this reminds me of my experience also in my experience of being in Karail, in that informal settlement is very fresh. So there are these community-based organizations, and there are these leaders who become the face of representation, and then there is a power dynamics because NGOs and different people come, and these are the same set of people are selected to be representative. So over time, you could have one leader being a representative of that community in 10 different NGOs. And that wields a tremendous amount of power. And he gets to be in that very autocratic position. And people start to, fear him because, he can take the water connection out, or he can put in a bad name.
In some ways, I mean, I would really argue if that system is a bad thing. I understand that there may be some individuals who wish to use that power for their own individual gain, for example.
Yeah.
But more often than not, the people that we see actively sort of cajoling community into this direction are women, and particularly grandmothers who have, been taking care of, many of the kids in this neighborhood, for example. And I think, so what I often talk about is we need to look for the old aunties. They are the ones who are able to sort of represent best in some ways, but also sort of build trust and solidarity within mothers around in their area, for example. So that's kind of, if I were to design something like this, I would focus on the old and young mothers in neighborhoods.
I mean, so that's an interesting point, because you start to see all the differences that make up the community, rather than, oh, we need to include the slum dwellers, quote unquote, as if it's homogeneous, like everyone is the same. And it's not, precisely. Because within that you have like so many kind of like, sorry, Gaurav, 5 minutes remaining for 0-3 activity. Oh, okay. Oh my God. But so, yeah, no, I mean, if we were to say that, we have been talking about, if I really try to, wrap my head around, I mean, we talked about kind of like identifying what I call, let's say, community linchpins, or people who are like the assemblers, or who can really push. How do you, get in touch with them when working with communities? But what do you think, I mean, if we are bringing close to this idea of existing incompatible solutions, what do you think are the existing quote unquote incompatible solutions? Like, what are the things that is preventing, or what are the issues that you're facing right now with the so-called solutions that you see right now? Niranjan, like regarding representation or inclusivity, there is always this talk about, or this is a very hot topic right now, inclusivity. So people are trying to do things, but what do you see as the problem in the existing solutions?
I think we've already touched on that. I mean, especially in Nepal's context, it's mostly just tokenistic, and it's not real representation, and people with power or connections usually sort of, so it's appears mostly fake and not quite working for the most part, although I'm speaking very generally.
Yeah, but what about Niranjan? I mean, do you feel like, this is my idea, that, or this is how I see it, it's often like you'll see that a decision has been taken, and then the community is brought in as if to give like a legitimacy to it. So it's not just simply tokenistic, but it also is a way to cover up that you have made choices for the community. And then the notion of participation or participatory design then is used as a way to say, look, people saw it, or they voted for it. Or do you see similar things in Nepal? Or Samantha, you can also chip in after Niranjan. Do you see that?
Yes, and I also want to bring in, especially with indigenous communities, I mean, language barriers, like just lack of basic awareness, their own rights, education, so I'm thinking of all these hydropower projects in the mountains, and it's treated as a development project, and that's where, people who want to quote unquote develop the country, but then displacing entire populations of indigenous community without taking their, so all of those issues, and they're not even fully aware of their rights and all of that. So that happens quite frequently in Nepal.
Sam? If you go back to the original question, like, what do you see as kind of like the existing incompatible solutions?
Sorry, the cat is making noises. I have
no, go ahead.
Here, so you may hear them as well. But the thing I wrote in the chat, lack of neurodiversity. So to point to the point about tokenism, which is obviously, the main thing, the main challenge with any sort of diversity and inclusion practice or framework or process. What we're seeing is you have, all the colors of the rainbow sitting at your table, but everyone's thinking the same thing. They're all singing from the same hymn sheet. And so this is how you essentially get this tokenistic response of, yeah, everybody agrees with this situation here. So that sort of method of essentially finding voices that are agreeing with you, and then to claim that it's the way that we should then go is a colonial methodology. This is something that I think is very, of course, dangerous, because corporate are doing this, so it's not colonial in the sense of the government imposing it on people now, but it's corporate, it's money who are doing this. So
capital.
These methodologies are very, they need to be very critically examined, in my opinion, and particularly so whenever design firms claim that they're doing, X, Y, and Z. Like, these are, I mean, for sure, you'll find, all of these shortcuts, so-called, being taken, and yet they will market all of this stuff. So that's the tokenism aspect, that they are gaining the benefits essentially of that want to be seen as people who are doing things in the so-called right way without actually putting in the real effort to do that. And at the same time, the marginalized communities are, it's not that they're quiet about it. On the one hand, they don't have the resources to spend, like, entire days having conversations about how they can, try to make change within the community. Nobody's focused on that. Everybody's trying to just survive. This is the economic situation, right, for most people in the global South. But on the other hand, there is huge interest. If I just can, instead of going to work today, I can take the day off, don't worry about my wages, because I can go to this dialogue, have my concerns aired, and then get my daily wages. So I'm not losing anything, really, but I get my concerns aired. That, I think, many people would want to engage with. It's something that we're really missing, and that's partly what I mean by resources.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, Gaurav, do we have time, or are we out of time to move on to the last session, the last part?
We can take on like 2-3 extra more minutes, 2-3-4 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so both to Niranjan and Samantha, I mean, what do you think is, I think, like, whose benefit is to solve this problem? If you were to, let's say, make money out of solving a problem, I mean, these don't sound like, changing mindsets, or these are not like, it's not the same thing as, the idea of Uber, let's say, oh, people need to move from A to B, they can't move right now. Okay, I invented a way to move from A to B. But for example, being inclusive, diluting the power dynamics, or upsetting, because representation has something to do with the status quo. So, so how do you think, or do you think that's a problem, that most, let's say, innovation that is geared towards coming up with a product that can be service oriented? Like, can you imagine representation to be a service oriented thing? If you know if you get the drift of my question. Samantha, I mean, anyone can go.
Well, I'll just say that this is the responsibility of the municipality. This is the reason why we have governments, and especially city level, neighborhood level governments. That's sort of who I think should be leading on this.
Yeah, so of course that's why it's not a question of you know, if you know what I mean. I mean, you can't have like a company that does.
Well, I'll give you an example, right?
Yeah,
so a company called Neighborlytics, based in Australia, you might have heard of them. They're essentially a data science company.
Yeah, I know them. I mean, kind of like my friend runs it.
Yeah, precisely. So what they do is they're trying to break into that model, right?
Yeah.
And as far as I know, they're the ones who have gotten furthest in this field. However, if you look at it, it's a very commercialized and sort of segmented way of looking at it. It's still a siloed, I mean, data heavy, so it's quantitative as opposed to qualitative. There's another, it's not a commercial effort, it's not a social enterprise, it's actually a consortium effort, and it's based in Sweden. It's called the Södertörnsmodellen. It's essentially
could you write these names down in the chat box so that it's easier for
Sure, of course. I need to look up
Neighbor Analytics.
Neighborlytics and Södertörnsmodellen. I don't know if you can actually look it up because I'm not sure if the website is still being funded. But I'll have a look, and I'd be happy to share it with Prabina when I find it. But it's essentially a consortium of 7 different municipalities who are neighbors of each other, and they engage with basically the largest firms, the largest development firms, the largest employers, you know, all these people, as well as neighborhood associations, to gather data. So the entire dialogue is based around, can we organize ourselves to consolidate the data that we have so that we can look in the wider perspective, not just our municipality, but 7 different municipalities, what we're looking at in this space with regards to social issues. So for example, one of the things that they were able to find was that in one municipality, when parents get divorced, it's usually the woman who has to leave because there are no affordable single sort of bedroom or small apartments to rent. And so they have to leave, and that's the point where the data set basically leaves, right? You don't know where that data point goes. But then you can see now in the other like municipality, that's where she went. And this is what is happening, and that's how, you know, so there are these ways of sort of trying to deal with and understand data. But what I'm interested in the Södertörnsmodellen's version is that it's not just data, it's about the dialogue that gets to the data. That's why I think it's important. And they've been doing this, like I said, for 7 years, ran out of funding, no idea what's happening now.
No, but it's still a solid idea, I think.
Yes,
but
of course.
This brings the notion of who can be the client, I mean, or for a commercial entity, because you do have, let's say, McKinsey or Boston Consultancy Group,
they are the last people, management consultancies are the last people I would trust with any of the stuff.
No, I know that. But again, if you go back to what you said, not necessarily that, I'm not questioning kind of like, I'm talking about the notion that you could be serving municipalities, because I see that in Bangladesh, for example, there are a lot of municipalities who get grants, who have the money, but they don't know how to spend it well. So can there be a viable commercial entity who goes to municipalities and says, okay, we're gonna help solve problems of representation, problems of governance? I'm brainstorming here, I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Well, that's the reason I said that with Donut. I'm trying to do that, but I don't understand how. I've only recently just moved back to Southeast Asia, and I'm trying to understand who's doing what the power structures are, etc. Okay. But I agree with you that this needs to be a form of, like, it's not an NGO, it's a business. This needs to be a for-profit situation in order to really incentivize other people to also start doing stuff like this.
Yeah, no, because that's why I'm trying to move away from that space of, okay, so like an NGOs, because there are also, if you know BRAC in Bangladesh, I mean, they're doing a lot of work with municipalities, but what I see as one of the biggest incompatible solutions is that it's quite siloed, and that they work in a very particular way that, that hasn't shifted in the last 20 years. So that's kind of like my idea of why probably we would need to think of a different way of interacting between municipalities and between citizens for representation. So I think we're coming towards the end. Prabina is, sorry, hi. So I think,
hi.
Yeah, we have like the last 10 minutes for the ideation, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we have only 5 minutes.
Okay, but
left.
that's fine. I mean,
yeah.
So both Niranjan and Samantha, let's use the 5 last minutes. I mean, I give this time to you. Use the chat box to put in any idea that you think is gonna kind of like solve the issue, be a response to the issue, not solve it completely, make it better. And it's not a question of is it realistic or whatever is in your kind of like a collective brainstorm. So I'll just start, but just feel free to type it in the chat box. Does that sound okay? Yeah, Niranjan. Yeah, Sam. Oh, so yeah, Niranjan has to leave. But Sam, feel free to just write. I mean, I'm gonna do as well. I mean, the idea is that if it was like 20 participants or 10 participants, this would be like the ideation session. But Prabina, I'm sure you're taking notes, but I think there are a few particular threads that that I have been writing down that could be what I think of ideation. So Sam, feel free to write down or be part of that conversation because it's only right now, it's only you.
Yeah.
But
so I would just add that I'm now very focused, like based on this conversation and obviously a lot of previous conversations that I've had, I'm very focused in trying to understand how we can hold these sorts of dialogues. And it's not about, well, okay, so there are two things that make this sort of important, or I guess could easily fail. The first thing is if I don't get enough funding, which essentially means I don't get enough of the right people in the room. Because again, when you don't prioritize getting the unheard voices heard, then what's going to happen is the power, structures are going to do its thing, and you're going to find all of the same people in the same space because they have the money to devote time, etc., to be in that space.
Exactly.
But the second issue that could kind of make it fail really easily is even if I have exactly the right people in the room, it breeds toxicity as opposed to building solidarity. So it's again, facilitation that's important. So those two aspects I think are absolutely crucial to this sort of work. But for me, it's very clear. It's these sorts of stakeholder engagement dialogues. It's dialogues and not for the sake of an outcome, but simply just for the sake of solidarity building, understanding, trust building. Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's quite important because I think even if there is an idea here, that would be you cannot actually jump towards, regarding representation, it's difficult to jump towards a solution like, or in that sense of, oh, this innovation is gonna solve the problem of representation, because I don't think it's a straight cut jump.
Not that linear, but going back to what Niranjan had talked about, this is actually about worlds. This is about different worlds clashing. And so that's the reason why it's not a fast process, and it cannot be. And as soon as you make those jumps, you're essentially disrespecting the entire process, which is obviously what happens a lot in design.
Yeah, I mean, design innovation, because sometimes the shortest route is probably the longest route because you need to do it again and again. If that makes sense. Yeah. But of course, I think the idea of helping like commercial entities, helping governance units, municipalities, or even CBOs, or that potentially could be a viable way of way
so
of
if
moving
we're
forward?
looking at creating the conditions for those things to happen, then
Yeah.
we're talking about it's basically a theory of change is attrition. We need
Yeah.
to constantly flood municipalities as much as possible with these sorts of narratives in order for them to see the value in that and to start to engage in those ways, to put resources or to plan resources ahead of time into these kinds of initiatives.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally agree with that. I mean, I think the problem is you will not be able to solve your way out of the problems of representation.
No, definitely not by the same mode of operation.
Exactly. But probably that's why you need a lot of seeding. Like, you know, in the same way that, you know, angel investors invest a long time, but they get the output out long time later.
Yeah.
So you would probably need to seed that level of dialogue.
Yeah, and we're talking like 10 years,
and,
you know, sort of seeding.
yeah, but without fixing outcomes. Like it might fail, and you have to be. But that doesn't. But it's the same language that angel investors will use. That okay, I'm gonna use. You know, I'm gonna facilitate, and then
I don't think they're comfortable with this sort of uncertainty yet, because this is systemic uncertainty. It's not just, oh, I'm not sure if the customer will like this color or that color. You know what I mean?
No, I understand. Of course. So no, but the thing is, that's why there is a leap that needs to be made on all you know, by all parties.
Yeah.
It's not gonna get solved by the kind of like, oh, social entrepreneur solving Uber mentality. It's not going to be solved by the same mentality. So, which is a good learning actually, because that space is what that space looks like, how to have solidarity building, you know, agents, and how to, you know, facilitate them for a long run change in mindset. And that, because that's what I think Niranjan was trying to get to, that you wouldn't, you know, you can't have an app that, let's say, wipes away caste or the entrenched values. Like, oh, be a part of this app, and you will not get away with that app.
I want to make a final point, which is that if you're talking about mindset change, that is like real mindset change is intergenerational. You know, you're not working with the same people if you're talking about mindset change. This is sort of the thing when you work with communities. That's why curation is important in this sort of dialogue. So if you want change within 10 years, you're not talking mindsets. You're talking about trust building to be able to find compromises.
I mean, I'm so glad I'm not handling mindsets, because that's another breakout room. So no, this is better. It's this like, okay, 10 years. Yeah, it's manageable. Changing mindsets, because that's a different ball game altogether. But but we can end on the note that there are doable things. There are things that can be, you know, fostered, nourished, cared for, processes that can be, you know, set in motion that slowly does that. It's not absolutely, you know, it's not that there's nothing to do, but at the same time, we can't fall back on the narrative of coming up with one solution or a few solutions that's gonna question, quote unquote, solve problems of representation.
Precisely.
Can we end that on that note?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, all right. Prabina, I think that was a really good dialogue. Sam, nice to meet you actually.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a tenant right now in my backyard who is Filipino. So I don't. Are you from the Philippines?
No, I'm actually from Singapore, but I haven't lived in Singapore for 13 years. So.
Okay. But are you based in Singapore or Manila?
I'm currently in Metro Manila. I don't know what to say when people ask me where are you based. I just kind of say I'm based in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. We're actually starting to do our work in Metro Manila in the UP campus, working with informal settlements that are within the UP campus.
Yes.
And probably I'll just send you an email and we can chat later about it.
Oh, this would be awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
And you can check our website as well.
Sure.
That's that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I'll shoot you an email sometime next week, and then I'll put you in touch with the person leading the project in Manila. And I think that would be probably, I think, because we're looking for partners who can do that level of community building, and
yeah.
So that'll be a good collaboration down the line, probably. So good networking. Yeah.
Sweet. That sounds great.
Okay. I put the website in the chat box, so feel free to take a look when you have time.
Okay, I'll just leave you my email address as well.
All right.
Yeah, thank you both. I think we've just reached the general purpose of these workshop series, collaboration.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, that's that's what I'm doing it for. Okay, all right, that sounds good. So Pravina, are we going back to the main room?
Yeah, I think we just got a message from Gaurav.
1 minute left, yeah.
Yeah, in about 1 minute.
I'm just gonna step away to get more iced tea because I'm melting.
Okay, all right. I'm just gonna come as well.
Just sure. I'm just moving to the main session now.
All right, I think we're all coming back. Welcome back, everyone, to the plenary. Yeah, I think we're all joining back. Just giving it 30 more seconds. I hope the conversations in the breakout rooms were insightful. The one that I was in, Mindsets, was incredibly interesting. So very grateful for that. Okay, I think we've all joined back now. Before we move forward with anything else, if I could ask for a volunteer from each of the breakout rooms to share what has been discussed very briefly in 2 to 3 minutes or so. So what are some key insights that emerged out of the breakout room discussions? I think everyone should have had the chance to discuss who the volunteer is. If not, maybe we can quickly discuss that right
now. Samantha, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to be the volunteer? Because you're the only one right now.
Sure, of course.
You don't have a choice.
And also you'll hear my choir in the background. Trouble has woken up, so she's screaming.
So this is a representation.
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
So very briefly, we essentially talked about processes that would seek to bring representation into actual inclusive design as opposed to tokenization, and in many cases, sort of political grandstanding. We didn't use that word, but I'm using that word. With regards to essentially taking something that looks on paper as inclusive, as representative of local populations, including marginalized peoples, and essentially representing that through your own, well, I guess misappropriating it is the best way to say it. Misappropriating it for your own gain. And that might be, you know, to do better in polls. It might be to make it look as though you're doing something that you're not, in order to gain commercial credibility, etc. So those pitfalls, I think, and blind spots were what we talked about. And I think what came up as well was around the hyper stratification of society in urban areas, particularly where in many cases you have, you know, very poor living next to very rich, etc. And so there's this toxicity to essentially be dealt with as well. And so what we sort of landed upon was this idea of essentially stakeholder engagement dialogues, for not for the sake of any sort of design or anything like that, but simply for the sake of trust building, solidarity building, and understanding. So just seeking to promote that sort of connection in order to then, when, you know, push comes to shove, when it comes to actual, like, a design process that needs to happen within this urban area, for example, then there's already a common understanding of what are shared interests, as well as what are vested interests, perhaps, that in some cases need to be protected for the kind of holistic urban well-being, and in some cases don't need to be protected because they are commercial sort of corporate interests, for example. And these things need to be out in the open. And again, to curate these things, it's not like you're going to be able to put funding down for 2 years and then arrive at this point where everybody wants to hug each other, right? You're not going to get to that point. So it's not necessarily about changing mindsets, but it's more about getting to an understanding and what is the shared value that we can have here. So essentially working towards an understanding of what is the commons for us, what is important for us to actually work on together, and what is not important for us to work on together, and how can we build something in that common understanding from there. Tanzil, maybe you'd like to add on to that if I've missed anything.
So you also talked about kind of like who owns the city or who is part of the city. And then we talked about how we wanted to shift away from like an NGO mindset to how about, let's say, if it's the idea of governance, if it's the responsibility of, let's say, municipalities is to govern with maximum representation, and if they're failing to do that, could we, conceive of a commercial entity that goes and helps municipalities instead of citizens directly? So that the idea is that you could essentially provide service not just to citizens, because solving the issue of representation probably might not fall on the citizen themselves. It's not like I need to go from A to B, so I need to hire an Uber. It's not like someone especially, let's say, who is privileged, for them it might not be like, oh, I live in the formal city, why do I need to understand how someone in an informal settlement lives? So maybe it's not up to them. So if it's up to, let's say, the government to govern better or to build a better city or an urban well-being, if the government needs to do that, then how do we help municipal governments? How do we engage them? How do we see them as clients, as potential clients, instead of just the citizens as a client of urban services? I think that was also an important takeaway, because it expands the notion of who can you serve. And then, of course, this idea that, this is what Niranjan was saying, that at the end of the day, it's not, also Samantha agreed that, of course, it's not going to be a shortcut linear process. That you can't have an app to solve problem of representation in the next 1 year. But probably you can start somewhere and then use technology, use commercial entities to bring in and to build that solidarity, to bring that understanding, to bring that commons, this sense of what is commons, what is the city, as Samantha was mentioning. But I think in a broad stroke, I think that would be it. That would be the summary of the conversation we had. Okay, that's all from me, I guess.
Great, thank you so much, Samantha and Tanzil. Great insights. Maybe we can move now to access.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Adish. So our topic was access, and initially we began by framing the discussion around what access means to us. This was really interesting because we got to deconstruct what access means for certain populations. What we really focused on was not having access be a sort of like tokenistic thing, but actually be something that people that actually, like, for the people that are being impacted, for them to have access to whatever it is, services, decision making, the freedom to choose options, things like that. So we were careful to frame what access means and not have access be a sort of obligation or limited choice, but actually how do we create access by working with communities in the methods that they can utilize, right? So for like an example we were using was, it's kind of like limited if we have sort of online and virtual, internet-based sessions where certain populations can't even access those to give their 2 cents. So that's something we started with. And then moving on to innovation sparking. we brainstormed ideas on innovations that have to be sort of careful about how they address certain issues. One example we had was about a pocket park created by UNDP that took into account disability issues regarding wheelchair access, but then found that people who cannot see, some other populations were actually being left out and weren't able to access this sort of seemingly good service, right? So that's something that we thought about in terms of innovations. Some of the ideas people mentioned were need to partner with the government, especially young professionals, pushing the boundaries of what urban spaces can be, creating like creative outlets for groups to come up with solutions, gamifying gamifying the process of urban innovation. So those are the kind of like general topics that we talked about. And then we moved on to incompatible existing solutions. So solutions that seemed to address one issue, but actually created sort of problems for some other thing. So keeping in mind that not every solution is actually a solution, and this can actually lead to larger issues down the road. So having that bit like longer sort of long-term thinking, futures thinking, being very important to our group. So I think that's that. We didn't get to the last section, which we had a sort of rapid ideation and came up with sort of really creative solutions. But yeah, so those are our main topics.
Awesome, thanks, Adish. Okay, so now moving to mindset, and we unfortunately, the participants that were in our breakout room had to leave, and so I'll ask maybe Choi to give us notes on mindset.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. In our group, entering to mindsets right from the start, it's obvious that it's such a vast thing to enter into. So this was the initial difficulty. And then until we told them just anything that comes to mind. And so we really thought that the city by itself is not just one person. It's like it has a life of its own, and it will move according to maybe like all of us working together. And so this was something that was very, very strong. And so, but then again, since I started the conversation about Manila and the mindset of it being influenced by affluence as dictated by the past, so our history, the past colonizations that we have had, which because of, as I said, affluence, it has turned it into a car-centric city. And it seems like it's the same for the other cities like Dhaka and Kathmandu. And then in a special way, Dhaka said that having a car is the thing that is the greatest achievement that you can have. And so it's the idea of like it's a way for you to say that you have reached your aspiration. And so because of this, everyone is working around it. And so we said that maybe the city has to step up in creating the change that we'd like to see in it. And so we thought also that an innovation that we can take advantage of is really guerrilla urbanism, especially when the government is not stepping forward to do the job for the majority, for the whole body. And so the people have to be empowered enough to come up with ideas with whoever is near them and find solutions. They may be temporary or for long-term temporary thing, but it creates hope, and it keeps us, thinking of what possibilities we can have. And in the group, there are, I think all of us are all hardworking in the small groups that we're part of. And so we could see that they are actually working on something and not even minding if the government will help or not. But of course, we saw that the strength of our ideas would be pushed forward if there is also working with government and also technology. It is also very strong that a lot of the things that we'd like to solve in the city, if we want it to be more strategized, is if we are able to use technology for it. And then later on, towards the end of the discussion, there was something very important also that was put forward, which is integration. If you want to make like a mindset that is quite strong, a dominant one, a way for us to question it or move away from it or even support it is through giving the people the chance to experience the city. And this is where integration comes in. If we are able to give them an experience that would put people together, someone who's very different from you. So this would mean also entering into certain neighborhoods that you're not familiar with, or maybe even having our schools experience by what you teach in class. Maybe you can immerse them in society. And this may be difficult right now because of the pandemic and even a lot of other ideas that we've had. This is not easy right now, but then we thought that maybe we can arrive at a time when it will be safer. So we didn't want to share ideas, and we just wanted to put it forward. And then a lot of good things are happening also currently. And we thought of the community pantries and community farms, which can be also like, empowering still. It's in the people. And so we thought that it's not enough that you do a good thing. You have to talk about it. So take advantage of social networking in putting forward even something that's done by a family, a group of families, or a community, and then put it in social media so that it inspires. And then maybe it would have other repercussions in other parts of the city. Then lastly, we also thought that maybe for something that they've already done and we don't have the funds for it, not to depend on government, but believe that there are funders out there who are looking for people like us who are ready to write proposals and put forward creating social and sustainability plans, not just for the project itself, but for the people who will be benefiting from that particular project. So it's actually a combination of our history and then how much of the government taking part in it, and also the influences around it, because it's true that for many, the city is just a hub. And if you don't own, if you don't feel that you own that city, you tend to just use it and discard it if you have no use for it anymore. And so really all of this put together have to be something that we have to bring ahead and maybe communicate more so that it would influence more people, even change mindsets. Is that right, Kavya?
Absolutely.
Because Kavya is in our group.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Joy. That covers all of the insights discussed. Thanks so much. And thank you, everyone in the breakout rooms, the facilitators, all the participants who are participating. We're so inspired by all the insights that have just been put forward. We just have a very quick discussion scheduled before closing, so I'm going to hand it back to Prabina now.
Thank you, Kavya. Also realizing we are running over time as well. So just a quick collective discussion here, for which I would request all of the participants to turn on their video, including mine if the bandwidth permits, because we want this to be sort of a collective discussion as well. And also please feel free to just use the chat box to send in your inputs as well. Maybe also being mindful of time. I would request 2 volunteers to sort of tackle the questions here that I'm now going to put out about values. So the question for the collective discussions that we have here is what values are are each of these thematic areas bringing up? So what are the principles or the values that people find very difficult to part with or even to compromise with that are related to these thematic areas? Just trying to get the understanding of what cannot absolutely be changed, what is driving these values, what is driving these thematic areas or the problem areas that we just discussed about. Where do you think this is coming from? And why do you think this is still existing? Also considering who do you think are the main drivers for this? And if this were to change, who you think would be the main drivers for these changes? Feel free to use the chat box as well, or if we have any volunteers.
I can share the discussion that happened in the mindset room. So I think Kanish told that one of the values, not particularly value, but I think people come for a temporary time period in Dhaka. And what that basically means is that a lot of people assemble for a temporary purpose for there, and they want to move to other places. So what happens is that it becomes sort of a use and throw sort of a thing at the back of the head. So I think one of those things is that the value there is that it is not permanent. I don't want to be permanent, or maybe for some people it might be that, oh, I'm in this city because I want to earn my bread, but I don't really like the city. I want to maybe live in the rural villages and stuff. So I think if somehow, I think one of those values is that very integral value is that it feels like a stranger place, even though it's part of a country itself. I think we are very much focused, and we sort of associate ourselves to the places where we are born, maybe where our ancestors are born. So I think one deep value would be that basically what is our origin and how do we relate to physically in terms of location to ourselves. That might be a very strong value over there. So yeah.
I just also want to add, like, especially related to values, if you are thinking about, I think that this might be useful for all themes. We need to be transparent in what we are trying to achieve, especially related to, it might be related to the access or the other themes that we have touched upon. Also, I think networking is highly important, especially to reach out those who might not be reachable, from information technology services. So a deep down networking, and what are the current needs of the community that we need to understand that deep down as well. And most of the programs are at the local government level, right? We need to also ensure that what kind of programs are running by the local government, because for the future, for the long-term sustainability of these programs, they are the driving forces, and also the community. So it's very necessary to make sure that both of these are in any aspects of development, in any aspects of projects, or in aspects of programs being designed by the development partners or any other organizations. These two bodies, like community and the local government, needs to be brought in to make it more sustainable and to make it more long term. So yeah, just wanted to add those points.
Thank you so much. I think with that, we are now at the end of this workshop. Thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you so much. Regarding what's upcoming as well, we have a last workshop remaining in this series of 3. So we will keep you all posted on what's happening. Also, we'll try to keep in touch with all of you and sort of keep this conversation, this synergy going amongst all of us. Thank you so much. Also, a big shout out to our facilitators as well. Thank you so much, and see you all very soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.